My son thought I kept old newspapers and broken furniture in storage unit 404. He thought I was just a senile old hoarder holding on to the past. But his wife Tiffany had a different theory. She thought I was hiding millions in stolen cash or bars of gold. For 3 years I drove my rusted pickup truck to that storage facility every Sunday morning just to feed her greed. I let her watch me carry heavy black bags inside. I let her see me wipe my brow as I walked out. I was not hiding a fortune, I was baiting a trap. When I finally left town for a week, my son called me in a panic, screaming that she had bolt cutters and was going to break the lock. I just sipped my coffee and smiled. "Let her cut it, son," I said. Because Tiffany did not know that the moment she snapped that lock, she was not opening a treasure chest, she was signing her own arrest warrant. Before I tell you what was really behind that steel door, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to protect your family from a wolf in sheep's clothing. My name is Caleb Robinson. I am 73 years old, and I spent 40 years as a private investigator learning that everyone has a secret, and usually the prettier the face, the uglier the lie. I was sitting at table 15. In the wedding industry, they have a polite name for table 15. They call it the overflow table. But anyone with half a brain knows what it really is. It is the penalty box. It is where you put the people you had to invite, but wish had stayed home. I was the father of the groom, and I was sitting next to the kitchen doors. Every time a waiter walked out with a tray of shrimp, I got hit with a blast of steam and the smell of dish soap. From my seat, I had a perfect view of the head table. It was elevated on a platform like a throne room. My son Darius looked handsome in his tuxedo, but he looked small. He looked like an accessory. Next to him sat Tiffany St. James. She was glowing. Her dress probably cost more than the down payment on my first house. She was laughing, throwing her head back for the photographer, flashing a smile that was practiced and perfect. She looked like a princess. But to my tired old eyes, she looked like something else entirely. She looked like a predator who had just dragged a gazelle back to her cave. I looked down at my suit. It was a charcoal gray wool suit I had bought 10 years ago for a funeral. It was clean, it was pressed, but it was old. The lapels were a little too wide for modern fashion, and the elbows were starting to shine. Tiffany had told me specifically to wear something beige or cream to match her aesthetic. I told her I do not own a cream suit. She had rolled her eyes and walked away. That was why I was at table 15. She had told Darius that my dark suit would ruin the color palette of her wedding photos. She said, "Dad looks a little too dusty for the front row, Darius. We want the pictures to look aspirational." Dusty. That is what she called me. Like I was a piece of furniture that needed to be wiped down. I took a sip of the champagne. It was warm and tasted like vinegar. I looked around my table. I was sitting with a distant cousin I had not seen in 20 years and 2 of Tiffany's college friends who were already drunk and complaining about the humidity. They did not speak to me. To them, I was invisible. I was just the old black man in the corner who paid for the open bar but was not allowed to drink from the top shelf. Darius stood up to give a toast. He tapped his glass. He looked nervous. He kept glancing at Tiffany for approval. "I want to thank everyone for coming," he stammered. "Especially my beautiful wife, Tiffany. She planned this whole day. She is the light of my life." Tiffany beamed. She did not look at him with love. She looked at him with ownership. She placed a hand on his arm, not to comfort him, but to silence him when he talked too long. Darius looked out into the crowd. His eyes scanned the room. He was looking for me. When he finally found me tucked away in the shadows near the restrooms, his face fell. I saw the shame in his eyes. He knew this was wrong. He knew that the man who taught him how to throw a baseball and how to change a tire should not be sitting next to the garbage cans, but he did not say anything. He just gave me a weak smile and sat back down. I did not blame him. Darius was a good boy. He was soft. He had my heart, but he did not have my spine. I had raised him to be kind, and Tiffany had turned that kindness into a leash. I needed air. The room was suffocating with the smell of expensive perfume and desperation. I stood up, leaning heavily on the table, not because I was weak, but because it made people underestimate me. That is the first rule of investigation. If you look harmless, people stop hiding things from you. I walked slowly toward the terrace. The reception was being held at a country club, a place that would not have let me in the front door 50 years ago unless I was carrying a mop. Now I was paying the bill. The terrace was empty, or so I thought. I walked toward a cluster of decorative palms, seeking a quiet spot to smoke a cigar. I reached into my pocket and touched the cold brass of my lighter. Then I heard voices. They were coming from the other side of the palms. High-pitched, giggling voices, the sound of women who have had too much wine and think they are alone. "Oh my God, Tiff, you did it! You actually locked him down!" I froze. I knew that voice. It was Tiffany. I stood perfectly still in the shadows. I controlled my breathing. I became part of the scenery. "Yeah, I did it," Tiffany said. Her voice was not the sweet, melodic tone she used with Darius. It was rougher, deeper. It was the voice of a woman who smokes a pack a day when no one is looking. But God, was it exhausting. Did you see his dad, sitting in the corner like a gargoyle? I swear if I have to listen to one more of his boring stories about the good old days, I am going to scream. Her friends laughed. "He looks so poor," one of them said. "Does he even have any money?" Darius said he used to be a cop or something. "He was a private eye," Tiffany corrected. "And yes, he has money. He lives like a monk in that rundown bungalow, but I know he is hoarding it. Hoarding it where the friend asked. Under his mattress." "Better," Tiffany said. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "He has a storage unit." "A storage unit." "Yeah. At Secure Storage on 5th Street, Unit 404. I tracked him on his phone last month. He goes there every Sunday morning, rain or shine. He stays inside for exactly 1 hour. And get this, I saw him carrying these heavy black duffel bags in there." So what the friend asked, "Maybe he collects old magazines." "No," Tiffany hissed. "It is money, or gold, or something valuable. Think about it. He has no mortgage. He has no car payments. He never buys anything new. Where does his pension go? Where does the income from those rental properties he owns go? He is stashing it. He is hiding it from the government, and he is hiding it from Darius." She paused, and I could hear the sound of a lighter clicking. "But do not worry," she said, exhaling a cloud of smoke that drifted through the palm leaves. "Now that I am officially Mrs. Robinson, I have legal standing. I am going to find out what is in that locker, and once I do, I am going to make sure Darius gets power of attorney. That old man is not going to take that money to the grave. It belongs to us. It belongs to me." I stood there in the dark, clutching my unlit cigar. My heart was beating slow and steady. A younger man might have been angry. A younger man might have burst through the bushes and confronted her. He might have caused a scene, told his son that he married a gold digger, and demanded an annulment. But I was not a young man. I was Caleb Robinson. I had tracked insurance fraudsters, cheating spouses, and embezzlers for 4 decades. I knew that confrontation is the enemy of strategy. If I yelled at her now, she would play the victim. She would cry. She would tell Darius that his jealous father was ruining her special day. And Darius, being the soft-hearted fool he was, would believe her. He would choose her. And I would lose my son forever. No. You do not catch a rat by shouting at it. You catch a rat by leaving a trail of cheese that leads straight to a spring-loaded bar. I listened as they finished their cigarettes and went back inside to dance. I waited a full 5 minutes before I moved. I walked to the edge of the terrace and looked out at the golf course. The moon was reflecting off the manicured grass. Unit 404. She had been tracking me. She thought she was smart. She thought she was the detective. I smiled. It was a cold smile. She was right about one thing. I did go there every Sunday, and I did carry heavy bags. But she was wrong about the treasure. She wanted to know what was in the locker. She wanted to break into my life and strip mine my legacy. I took the cigar out of my mouth and put it back in my pocket. I did not feel like smoking anymore. I felt like working. I walked back into the ballroom. The music was loud, a thumping bass beat that rattled the silverware. Darius and Tiffany were in the center of the dance floor. She had her arms around his neck, whispering in his ear, probably telling him how much she loved him while mentally calculating the net worth of his inheritance. I walked back to table 15. I sat down. My champagne was flat and warm. I picked up the glass. I looked at Tiffany across the room. She caught my eye. For a second her mask slipped and she gave me a look of pure contempt. A look that said, "You are next, old man." I raised my glass to her. A silent toast. "You want to play a game, Tiffany," I thought. "You want to hunt for treasure? Fine. I will give you a map. I will give you a shovel. I will even hold the flashlight for you while you dig, but you better be careful what you dig up. Because in my line of work we do not bury gold. We bury the bodies of the stupid people who thought they could outsmart us." I drank the cheap champagne. It tasted like victory. The wedding was over. The marriage had begun. But the war The war was just getting started. And unlike my son, I did not intend to lose. They moved in 2 weeks after the wedding. They called it consolidation. They said they wanted to save money for a down payment on their own dream home and at the same time take care of me in my golden years. It was a beautiful speech. Darius delivered it with tears in his eyes, holding my hand across the kitchen table. He really believed it. He believed that he was being a good son, returning to the nest to support his aging father. But I looked past his shoulder at Tiffany leaning against the doorframe, checking her nails. She was not looking at a father. She was looking at a landlord who did not charge rent. She was looking at a house she could conquer room by room. I said yes because a father does not close his door to his son. But I also said yes because, as any good investigator knows, you cannot catch a thief if you do not let them into the building. If I wanted to expose Tiffany for the parasite she was, I had to let her attach herself to the host. I had to let her get comfortable. I had to let her think she was in charge. The invasion started slowly. First, it was the smell. My house had always smelled of old books, pipe tobacco, and lemon polish. Within 3 days, it smelled like a department store perfume counter. Tiffany filled every outlet with those plug-in air fresheners that release a cloud of artificial vanilla every 20 minutes. It gave me a headache, but I said nothing. Then came the furniture. My recliner, the one I had sat in to watch every Super Bowl since 1990, was moved to the garage. Tiffany said it was an eyesore. She replaced it with a beige accent chair that looked like it would collapse if I sneezed on it. She called it modernizing. I called it erasing my history. But the real invasion was not the furniture. It was the surveillance. Tiffany did not think I noticed. She thought because I walked with a slight limp and wore reading glasses that my senses were dull. She was wrong. I heard the drawers opening when I was in the shower. I saw the way the papers on my desk were shuffled just a fraction of an inch to the left. She was hunting. She was looking for bank statements. She was looking for insurance policies. She was looking for the paper trail of the fortune she was convinced I had. I made it easy for her. I left fake bank statements in the top drawer showing a checking account with only $2,000 in it. I wanted her to be frustrated. I wanted her hunger to grow, because a hungry predator takes risks. The breakthrough happened on a Tuesday. I was sitting on the back porch pretending to do a crossword puzzle but watching the reflection in the sliding glass door. Tiffany was in the kitchen. She was supposed to be making lunch, but she was standing by the key rack. I have a key rack by the back door made of heavy oak. It holds the keys to the truck, the shed, the house, and a few old padlocks I haven't used in years. But there was one set of keys that always drew the eye. It was a single large brass key on a heavy steel ring. It was old-fashioned, the kind of key you expect to open a dungeon or a chest. I had wrapped the head of the key in yellow electrical tape and written the number 404 on it in thick black marker. I watched her in the reflection. She touched the key. She ran her finger over the number. She looked over her shoulder toward the porch to check if I was watching. I kept my head down, scribbling on the newspaper. She took the key off the hook. She weighed it in her hand. It was heavy. Brass usually is. She slipped it into her pocket. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes. She took her phone out. She snapped a picture of the key. Then she put it back on the hook. She walked out onto the porch, smiling that fake smile that never reached her eyes. "Hey, Dad," she said sweetly. "I am making sandwiches. Do you want turkey or ham?" "Ham," I said, not looking up. "And Tiffany?" "Yes, Dad. You might want to wash your hands. That key rack is dusty. I have not cleaned those keys in years." Her smile faltered for a microsecond. She looked at her hands, then at me. She realized I knew she had touched them. But she didn't know how much I knew. "Oh, I was just straightening up," she lied smoothly. "Just trying to keep things tidy." I nodded. "Good girl. Tidy is good." That night I set the hook. After dinner, Darius went to the living room to watch the game. Tiffany stayed in the kitchen wiping down counters that were already clean. I sat at the kitchen table. I took the key ring down from the hook. I took out a small tin of brass polish and a soft cloth. I sat there under the bright kitchen light polishing the key to Unit 404. I worked slowly. I rubbed the cloth over the brass until it shone like gold. The yellow tape stood out stark and bright against the polished metal. Tiffany stopped wiping the counter. She watched me. She could not help herself. Greed is a powerful magnet. That is a serious-looking key, Dad, she said, trying to sound casual. What is it for? I did not answer immediately. I held the key up to the light. It glinted. This, I said softly, is the most important key I own. Tiffany took a step closer. She leaned against the table. Really, she said. More important than the house key. The house is just wood and brick, I said. Anyone can buy a house if they have enough credit. But this key, this opens something that cannot be bought. Darius walked in during the commercial break. He saw us. He saw the intensity in Tiffany's eyes. What are you guys talking about? He asked, grabbing a beer from the fridge. Dad was just showing me this old key, Tiffany said. She looked at Darius with a meaningful glance. The kind of look that says, pay attention, you idiot, this is the money. Darius looked at the key. Oh, that old thing. That is for the storage locker, right? The one down on 5th Street. Tiffany's eyes widened. She had confirmed the location. Secure storage on 5th Street. Yeah, Dad goes there every Sunday. Darius laughed. I keep telling him to clear that junk out so we do not have to pay the monthly fee. It is a waste of money to store old newspapers, Dad. I stopped polishing. I looked at Darius. Then I looked at Tiffany. It is not newspapers, son, I said. The room went quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Darius stopped drinking his beer. You always said it was junk, Dad. You said it was just old files from your PI days. I lied, I said simply. I put the cloth down. I placed the key in the center of the table. It sat there heavy and golden. A man has to have secrets, I said. A man has to have something put away for a rainy day, or for the end of days. Tiffany was practically vibrating. I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was doing the math. A storage unit. A secret. A key I polished like a religious artifact. So, what is it? Tiffany asked. Her voice was tight. She tried to make it sound like a joke, but there was no humor in it. What is in locker 404, Dad? Gold bars, stolen cash, the crown jewels. She laughed a high-pitched, nervous sound. I looked her dead in the eye. I used the stare I used to use on suspects in interrogation rooms, the stare that made them sweat. It is my life's work, Tiffany, I said. It is everything I have built, everything I have saved, everything I have protected. I picked up the key and put it in my pocket, and it is the only inheritance I have left to give. I stood up. I saw Darius look at Tiffany. I saw the hunger in her eyes transfer to him. She was infecting him. She was making him wonder. I patted Darius on the shoulder. Good night, son, I said. Do not stay up too late. I walked toward my bedroom, but I stopped at the doorway. Oh, and Tiffany, I said without turning around. Yes, Dad. Do not touch that key again. The lock on Unit 404 is sensitive. It does not like strangers. If you try to force it, you might not like what snaps back. I walked into my room and closed the door. I did not go to sleep. I sat in the dark and listened. I heard them whispering in the kitchen. Did you hear that Tiffany hissed? He admitted it. It is not junk, Darius. He said it is his inheritance. He said it is everything he saved. Darius sounded unsure. Maybe he means sentimental stuff, Tiff. Photos, memories. Don't be stupid, Tiffany snapped. You do not polish a key for photos, and you do not visit a storage unit every week to look at old albums. It is money, Darius. Or something worth money. He has been holding out on us. He has been pleading poverty while sitting on a gold mine. But it is his stuff, Darius said weakly. It is our future, she corrected him. We are living in this dusty house taking care of him, and he is hoarding wealth in a metal box. It is selfish. We deserve to know. I leaned my head back against the doorframe and smiled in the dark. She took the bait. She took it hook, line, and sinker. She thought the key was the golden ticket. She did not know it was the trigger. The next morning, the atmosphere in the house had shifted. It was subtle but distinct. Darius was more attentive. He poured my coffee. He asked how I slept. He was fishing. He was looking for crumbs of information. Tiffany was different too. She was watching me constantly. When I went to the bathroom, she checked the key rack. When I went to get the mail, she watched from the window. But I did not make a move. Not yet. A good fisherman knows you have to let the fish run with the line before you jerk it. I waited until Sunday. Sunday was the day. I woke up early. I put on my work boots. I grabbed the heavy black duffel bag from my closet. I filled it with old phone books and bricks wrapped in towels. It weighed about 50 pounds. I walked through the kitchen. Tiffany was sitting there drinking coffee, pretending to read a magazine. "Going out, Dad?" she asked. "Just running errands," I said, grunting as I lifted the heavy bag. "Need help with that?" she asked, eyeing the bag. "No," I said. "I got it." I walked out to the truck. I threw the bag in the back. As I backed out of the driveway, I checked my rearview mirror. The curtains in the living room moved. She was watching. I drove to secure storage on 5th Street. I knew she would follow. I knew she couldn't resist. I was leading her to the slaughterhouse, and she was running toward it with a knife and fork. Sunday mornings used to be for church and pancakes. That was the tradition Beatrice and I built over 40 years. We would wake up, listen to the gospel choir on the radio, and I would make blueberry pancakes while she read the paper. But traditions die when the people who hold them together pass away. Now, Sunday mornings were for the theater, not the kind you pay tickets for, but the kind you stage yourself to catch a thief. I woke up at 6 in the morning. The house was quiet. Darius and Tiffany were still asleep, probably dreaming of the wealth they thought they were entitled to. I went out to the garden shed. It was a cold morning, the kind that makes your joints ache, but I ignored the stiffness in my knees. I had work to do. Inside the shed, I had a stack of old paving bricks. They were heavy, rough, red clay bricks that I had pulled up from the walkway 10 years ago. I took 4 of them. I wrapped them carefully in old bath towels so they would not clank together. Then I placed them inside the black military duffel bag. I zipped the bag shut. I tested the weight. It was heavy, 50 pounds of dead weight. When I lifted it, the tendons in my neck stood out. My biceps strained. To anyone watching, it looked exactly like I was hauling bars of gold or stacks of dense cash. I carried the bag to my truck. My truck is a 1995 Ford. It is rusted around the wheel wells and the engine rattles like a box of rocks, but it runs. Tiffany hated it. She said it lowered the property value just by being parked in the driveway. I threw the bag into the passenger seat. It landed with a heavy thud that shook the cab. I climbed in and started the engine. As I backed out of the driveway, I looked up at the second-floor window. The curtains twitched, just a little, a small flutter of white fabric against the dark glass. She was awake, and the game was on. I drove slowly. I did not take the highway. I took the surface streets, driving through the quiet neighborhoods where people were walking their dogs and picking up newspapers. I checked my rearview mirror constantly. Habits from my days as a private investigator never fade. You look for patterns, not just cars. 3 blocks from the house, I saw it. A silver sedan. It was a rental. Tiffany was smart enough not to use her own car or Darius's car. She had rented a generic vehicle to tail me. She thought she was being covert. She hung back 2 cars behind me, changing lanes when I changed lanes. But she made rookie mistakes. She got too close at red lights. She tapped her brakes too often. I led her on a tour. I stopped for gas even though I had a full tank. I watched her pull into the parking lot of the convenience store across the street, pretending to check her phone. I walked into the station, bought a coffee, and walked back out, hauling the heavy bag from the seat just to move it to the bed of the truck. I wanted her to see the effort. I wanted her to see the struggle. Then I drove to secure storage on 5th Street. It is a bleak place. Rows of orange metal doors surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. It looks like a prison for furniture. I punched in my code at the gate. As the gate slid open, I saw the silver sedan pull over down the street. She was parking where she had a line of sight to Unit 404. I drove to the unit. I got out. I looked around suspiciously, acting like a man who has something to hide. I checked left. I checked right. Then I grabbed the bag. I heaved it onto my shoulder. I bent my knees, acting like the weight was almost too much for an old man to bear. I staggered a little as I walked to the door. I fumbled with the key, the golden key I had polished in front of her. I opened the lock. I slid the door up just enough to slide under, dragging the heavy bag with me. I slammed the door shut from the inside. To Tiffany, sitting in her rental car with binoculars, it looked like a deposit. It looked like the old man was stashing the weekly harvest of his secret empire. But inside the unit, the reality was very different. Unit 404 was not a vault. It was a man cave. I had a comfortable camping chair set up in the corner. I had a small folding table. And on that table, I had a battery-powered monitor connected to a wireless camera system I had rigged up in the vents. I unzipped the bag. I took out the bricks. I stacked them in the corner with the others. There was quite a pile growing there. A monument to her greed built of paving stones. Then I poured myself a cup of coffee from the thermos I had brought. I sat down in the chair. I picked up the Sunday newspaper I had stashed there the week before, and I watched the monitor. The screen showed the view from the camera mounted outside the unit. I could see the street. I could see the silver sedan. I zoomed in. Tiffany was there. She had lowered the binoculars. She was typing furiously on her phone. She looked excited. She looked like a cat watching a mouse hole. She was probably calculating how much gold 50 pounds would equal. She was probably shopping for yachts on her phone right now. I sipped my coffee. It was quiet in the storage unit. It smelled of dust and concrete, but to me it smelled like peace. For 1 hour every Sunday I was free from her perfume. I was free from her passive-aggressive comments about my clothes. I was free from the look of disappointment in my son's eyes. I read the sports section. I read the comics. I checked the batteries on the hidden cameras inside the unit. I had 3 of them, one pointing at the door, one pointing at the center of the room, and one hidden in a false electrical outlet pointing directly at the spot where a burglar would stand to cut the lock. After exactly 60 minutes, I stood up. I folded the empty duffel bag. It was light now, flexible. I rolled it up and tucked it under my arm. I opened the door. I stepped out into the sunlight. I made sure to walk with a bounce in my step. I wanted to look unburdened. I wanted to look like a man who had just relieved himself of a heavy load. I locked the door carefully, checking it twice. I patted the lock affectionately. I got back in my truck and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw the silver sedan pull out and follow me. She was shadowing me home. She wanted to make sure I didn't go anywhere else. When I got back to the house, Darius was in the driveway washing his car. He looked up as I pulled in. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes. Tiffany had been working on him, I could tell. Sleep deprivation is a classic cult tactic. Keep them tired, keep them confused, and they will believe anything you say. "Hey, Dad," Darius said, spraying down his wheels. "Have a good run." "Productive," I said, getting out of the truck. I tossed the empty bag into the cab. Darius looked at the bag. He noticed it was flat. He noticed I wasn't straining to carry it anymore. "You cleared out some junk," he asked. "Something like that," I said. Tiffany pulled into the driveway 5 minutes later. She parked the rental car on the street so I wouldn't see it, but walked up the sidewalk acting like she had been out for a jog. She was wearing workout clothes, but she hadn't broken a sweat. "Hey guys," she chirped. "Beautiful morning for a run." She kissed Darius on the cheek. Then she looked at me. Her eyes dropped to the empty passenger seat of my truck where the bag lay. A little smile played on her lips. A greedy, satisfied smile. She went inside to shower. Darius stayed outside with me. He turned off the hose. The silence between us was heavy. It used to be comfortable silence, the kind where we didn't need to speak to understand each other. Now it was the silence of things unsaid. Dad Darius started looking at his shoes. "Tiffany and I were talking last night." I leaned against the truck. "About what, son?" "About Mom," he said. I stiffened. We rarely talked about Beatrice. It was still too raw for both of us. "What about your mother?" I asked. Darius took a deep breath. He looked like he was reciting lines from a script, lines he had rehearsed but didn't fully understand. Tiffany says that when Mom died there should have been an insurance payout. Or an inheritance. Mom worked for the city for 30 years, Dad. She had a pension. She had savings. I looked at him. I saw the conflict in his face. He didn't want to ask this. He knew me. He knew I was an honest man. But the poison was already in his blood. "Your mother's pension paid for her medical bills," Darius the First said quietly. "You know that. The cancer treatment, the hospice. It drained us." Darius shook his head. "That is what you told me, Dad. But Tiffany did some research. She says the math does not add up. She says you sold the cabin by the lake 2 years ago. She says you have income properties you never told us about." He looked up at me, and for the first time I saw suspicion in his eyes. It broke my heart. "She thinks you are hiding it, Dad. She thinks you are taking Mom's money, the money that should have been for us, for our future, and you are locking it away in a box on 5th Street. I stared at him. So that was the angle. Not just greed, but justice. She had convinced him that I was a thief stealing from his dead mother. She had turned his grief into a weapon. "Is that what you think, Darius?" I asked. "Do you think I would steal from your mother? Do you think I would steal from you?" Darius looked away. He kicked at a tire. "I don't know what to think, Dad," he whispered. "But I see you with that key. I see you going there every week. And we are struggling, Dad. We are living in your guest room. We want to start a family. If you have the money, if you are sitting on a fortune, why won't you help us? Why are you hoarding it? It is Mom's legacy, Dad, he said, his voice rising. It belongs to the family, not just you. I have a right to it. I have a right to know what is in that locker. I looked at my son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the man I was so proud of. He was gone, replaced by this hollow shell filled with his wife's words. I wanted to shake him. I wanted to tell him that the only thing in that locker was a pile of bricks and a trap for his wife. But I couldn't. If I told him now, he would tell her. And she would spin it. She would say I emptied it. She would say I was gaslighting them. He needed to see it. He needed to be standing there when the door opened. You want to know what is in the locker? I asked. Yes, Darius said. I need to know. I nodded. You will know, son, I said, when the time is right. But remember one thing. What he asked. Be careful what you dig for, I said, walking toward the house. Because sometimes when you go looking for buried treasure, you only find bones. I left him standing in the driveway, water dripping from the hose onto his expensive sneakers. He looked lost. I went inside. Tiffany was in the kitchen humming to herself. She looked at me as I walked in. Did you have a nice talk with Darius? She asked innocently. Very illuminating, I said. I walked past her. I felt her eyes boring into my back. She thought she was winning. She thought she had turned my son against me. And she had. But she didn't realize that by turning him against me, she had forced me to take the safety off. I went to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed. I looked at the picture of Beatrice on the nightstand. I am sorry, B, I whispered. I have to teach him the hard way. I picked up my phone. I opened the app for the camera in the storage unit. The screen showed the pile of bricks in the corner. It was time to escalate. If they wanted gold, I would give them a gold rush. I stood up and went to the basement. I had to prepare the next piece of evidence, the piece that would drive Tiffany absolutely crazy, because curiosity is a fire, and I was about to pour gasoline on it. The invasion of my home did not happen with troops and tanks. It happened with ring lights and tripods. Tiffany called herself a content creator. I called her unemployed with a smartphone. But apparently in this new world that my son lived in, filming yourself dancing in your kitchen was a career. And like any growing business, she claimed she needed office space. It was a Tuesday evening when they cornered me. I was in the master bedroom, the room I had shared with Beatrice for 30 years. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, polishing my dress shoes. It was a habit I kept from my days in the force. You take care of your shoes, and they take care of you. Darius knocked on the door frame. He didn't come in. He stood there shifting his weight from foot to foot like he used to do when he had brought home a bad report card. Tiffany stood behind him. She was holding a tablet, and she looked impatient. Hey, Dad, Darius started. We need to talk. I put down the shoe brush. I looked at my son. I looked at the man who used to defend his friends on the playground but now couldn't even look his father in the eye. What is it, son? I asked. Well, Tiffany has been looking at the analytics for her channel, Darius said, stumbling over the words. She says the lighting in the guest room is bad. It is affecting her engagement rates. I looked at Tiffany. She stepped forward, pushing Darius aside. It is not just the lighting, Caleb, she said, using my first name, which always grated on my nerves. It is the acoustics and the space. I need a studio, a dedicated space to create content. If I am going to contribute to this household, I need the right tools. I looked around my bedroom. It was the biggest room in the house. It had south-facing windows that let in beautiful afternoon light. It had the ensuite bathroom with the tub Beatrice loved. And you think my bedroom is that space? I asked calmly. It is perfect, Tiffany said, walking into the room like she already owned it. If we move the bed out and paint these walls white, I can set up my green screen over there. The natural light is amazing for makeup tutorials. She spun around looking at the ceiling. Plus, Darius and I are squeezed into that tiny guest room. It is bad for our marriage, Caleb. We need space. So you want me to move out? I asked. No, Darius said quickly. No, Dad, not out. Just downstairs. Downstairs. The basement. It was finished, technically. I had put up drywall and carpet back in the 90s, but it was underground. It was dark. It was cold. It smelled of the sump pump and old memories. It was a place for storage, not for living. The basement, I repeated. It is private down there, Tiffany said. You like privacy, don't you, Caleb? You are always sneaking off to your storage unit anyway. Down there you can have all the peace and quiet you want, and we can have the run of the main floor. It makes sense." I looked at Darius. I waited for him to speak. I waited for him to say, "No, Tiffany. That is my father's room. That is the bed where my mother died. You cannot put him in the basement like a piece of unwanted furniture." But he didn't say it. He looked at the floor. He looked at the wall. He looked anywhere but at me. "It is just temporary, Dad," he mumbled, "until we get our own place." That was the moment my heart broke. Not because of the room. I could sleep on a park bench and be fine. It broke because I realized my son was gone. He had been hollowed out by this woman. She had taken his spine and used it to climb the social ladder. I stood up. I picked up my shoes. "Fine," I said. Tiffany blinked. She had expected a fight. She had her arguments ready. She looked almost disappointed that I gave in so easily. "Fine," she asked. Just like that, I said. "I do not need much space. If you need this room for your career, then take it." I walked to the closet and pulled out a suitcase. "I will start moving my things tonight," I said. Darius looked relieved. "Thanks, Dad. You are the best. I will help you carry the heavy stuff." I did not thank him. I just started packing. The move took 3 hours. We carried my clothes, my books, and the few personal items I had left down the narrow stairs to the basement. The air down there was 10 degrees cooler than the rest of the house. The windows were small rectangles near the ceiling that looked out onto the dirt and the weeds. Tiffany hovered around while we worked. She wasn't helping. She was supervising. She was already planning where to put her ring lights and her vanity mirror. She was measuring the walls. But she was also watching me. She was watching what I packed. She was looking for the same thing she had been looking for since the day she met me. The money. I knew she was watching. And I was counting on it. I had prepared for this moment. In my line of work, you learn that people see what they want to see. If you tell someone you have a gold mine, they might doubt you. But if you accidentally drop a nugget of gold in front of them, they will believe it with their whole soul. I was in the middle of packing my bookshelf. It was a collection of old detective novels and history books. Tiffany was leaning against the doorframe, sipping a diet soda, watching me put books into a box. I picked up a large hardcover book. It was a history of the British monarchy. It was heavy. As I lifted it, I tilted it slightly. A piece of paper slipped out from between the pages. It fluttered to the floor, landing face up right between my feet and Tiffany's toes. It was an old receipt. The paper was yellowed and brittle. I had aged it myself using tea and an oven, a trick I learned from a forger in New York back in '82. The ink was faded but legible. I pretended not to notice it. I turned back to the shelf to grab another book. But Tiffany noticed. Her eyes snapped to the paper like a lizard snapping at a fly. She bent down. "You dropped something, Caleb," she said. She picked it up. I turned around slowly, acting casual. "Oh, just some old bookmark," I said, reaching for it. "You can throw it away." But she didn't throw it away. She was reading it. I watched her face. It was a masterpiece of greed. Her eyes widened. Her breath hitched. Her hands started to tremble. The receipt was from a famous auction house in London, dated October 14th, 1990. Item, the Kensington Emerald Suite. Description, necklace, earrings, and bracelet. 18-karat gold and Colombian emeralds. Price paid $500,000. Buyer, C. Robinson. $500,000 in 1990. Adjusted for inflation, that was over $1 million today. Tiffany looked up at me. Her pupils were dilated. She looked like she had just seen God, and God was made of money. You bought this," she whispered. I snatched the paper from her hand. I did it quickly, angrily, like a man who had been caught with a secret he was desperate to keep. "It is nothing," I snapped. "Just an old souvenir. I told you to throw it away." I crumbled the paper in my hand. I shoved it deep into my pocket. "Souvenir," she stammered. "Caleb, that receipt says $500,000. For emeralds." I stared her down. I did a job for a client. I lied, my voice low and dangerous. "I was the middleman. It was a long time ago, Tiffany. Forget you saw it." I turned my back on her and shoved another book into the box. "But you kept the receipt," she pressed, stepping closer. "Why would you keep the receipt if you were just the middleman? Unless you kept the merchandise." I spun around. "Enough," I shouted. The sound echoed in the empty bedroom. Darius poked his head in from the hallway, looking scared. "Everything okay in here?" he asked. "Everything is fine," I said, staring at Tiffany. "We were just discussing history." Tiffany looked at me, then she looked at my pocket where the crumbled paper was. "Yeah," she said slowly, a slow smile spreading across her face. "History." She backed out of the room. "Come on, Darius," she said, grabbing his arm. "Let Dad finish packing. He has a lot of valuable things to move." I watched them go. I heard them whispering in the hallway as they walked away. "Did you see that?" she hissed. "Did you see that receipt?" "What receipt?" Darius asked. "Emeralds, Darius. Emeralds. He bought them. He still has them. That is what is in the storage unit. That is why he polishes the key." "Emeralds," Darius whispered. "Are you sure?" "I saw the paper," she said. $500,000. "Darius, we are rich. We are filthy rich." I closed the door. I sat down on the floor next to the box of books. I pulled the crumbled paper out of my pocket. It was a good forgery, one of my best. The receipt was real in the sense that it was a physical piece of paper, but the auction house didn't exist anymore and the transaction never happened. But to Tiffany, it was the gospel truth. She had been curious before. Now she was obsessed. I finished packing. I moved my life into the basement. That night, I lay on the lumpy mattress in the dark, listening to the footsteps on the floor above me. They were pacing, back and forth, back and forth. They weren't sleeping. They were planning. I smiled at the ceiling. Go ahead, children, I thought. Plan away. Dream of emeralds and gold, because the only thing you are going to find at the end of this rainbow is a pair of handcuffs. I rolled over and went to sleep. The basement was cold, but I felt warm. The trap was set. The bait was taken. Now all I had to do was wait for them to snap. The war for my sanity began in the kitchen. It is a strange place for a battleground, but in domestic warfare the kitchen is where the most effective sieges happen. After Tiffany saw the forged receipt for the emeralds, she did not call the police and she did not try to steal the key again. She realized that theft was too risky. Instead, she decided to squeeze me. She decided to make my life in my own house so uncomfortable, so humiliating, and so small that I would pay any price just to make it stop. She started with the food. I have always been a man of simple tastes, but I value quality. I like my coffee dark roast and fresh ground. I like real butter, not margarine. I like a thick steak on Friday nights. For 30 years I bought these things for myself without a second thought. But since Tiffany and Darius moved in, Tiffany had taken over the grocery shopping. She said it was easier since she was already going to the store for her organic kale and quinoa. I gave her my debit card for household expenses. It was a mistake. The first morning after the emerald discovery, I walked into the kitchen looking for my coffee. The glass jar where I kept my Colombian beans was empty. Instead, sitting on the counter was a large, generic tin of instant coffee, the kind that tastes like burnt dirt and sadness. I picked up the tin. I looked at Tiffany. She was sitting at the table drinking a latte made with the expensive espresso machine she had forced me to buy for her birthday. "We are cutting back, Caleb," she said without looking up from her phone. The grocery budget was getting out of control. We need to be fiscally responsible if we are going to save for a house. I looked at her latte. I looked at the avocado toast on her plate. Cutting back, I asked. "Yes," she said, taking a sip of the frothy milk. "Inflation is terrible. Everyone has to make sacrifices. I figured since you are retired and your palate is probably not what it used to be, the instant coffee would be fine. It is very economical." I did not argue. I did not point out that the price of one of her lattes could buy me a pound of real beans. I just made the instant coffee. I drank it black, standing by the sink while she ate her breakfast. It tasted like bitterness. That night dinner was a similar affair. She made salmon for herself and Darius. For me, she opened a can of vegetable soup. I forgot to defrost a third piece of fish, she lied. Her eyes challenged me to call her out. "But soup is good for you, Caleb. It is light. You do not want to go to bed on a full stomach at your age. Indigestion is a killer." I ate the soup. I wiped the bowl clean with a piece of stale bread. I went to bed hungry in my own basement, listening to the floorboards creak as they walked around the house I paid for. This went on for a week. The heat in the house was turned down to 60 degrees because energy costs are skyrocketing, Caleb. I sat in the basement wrapped in a blanket, shivering while she walked around upstairs in a tank top. She canceled the cable subscription because nobody watches TV anymore, Caleb. She changed the password to the Wi-Fi because we need to limit bandwidth for my uploads, Caleb. She was tightening the screws. She was trying to break me. She wanted me to come to her begging. She wanted me to say, "Here, take the key, take the emeralds, just give me a steak and a warm room." But she did not know Caleb Robinson. I had sat in stakeout cars for 3 days straight, peeing in a bottle and eating cold crackers. I had endured winters in Chicago tracking bail jumpers. I knew how to be uncomfortable, and I knew that silence was louder than screaming. So I said nothing. I ate the soup. I drank the bad coffee. I wore my coat inside. This silence drove her crazy. She needed a reaction. When she didn't get one from me, she turned her weapon on the weakest link in the chain. My son. Darius came down to the basement on a Thursday night. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. His eyes were shifting around the room, avoiding mine. He sat on the edge of my lumpy mattress while I sat in my old reading chair. "Dad," he said, his voice cracking, "we need to talk about finances." I put down my book. I looked at him. "I give you money for groceries, Darius," I said. "I pay the mortgage. I pay the insurance. What finances are we talking about?" Darius rubbed his face. "It is not enough, Dad. Tiffany says the cost of living is drowning us. She is stressed, Dad. She cries every night. She says she feels like a burden." I raised an eyebrow. "A burden who drinks $5 lattes. She feels like we are mooching off you." Darius continued, ignoring my look. "And she says, it is not fair. Not fair, I asked. Not fair that we are struggling, scraping by eating leftovers while you are sitting on a fortune." There it was. The poison had finally reached the heart. I leaned forward. "I am not sitting on anything, Darius. I live in a basement. I eat canned soup. Does that look like a fortune to you?" Darius stood up. He started pacing the small room. "We know about the receipt, Dad." The room went deadly quiet. He stopped pacing and looked at me. His eyes were pleading. He wanted me to deny it, or he wanted me to confirm it. He just wanted the uncertainty to end. "Tiffany saw it," he said. $500,000 in 1990. That is millions today, Dad. Millions. And you have it locked away in a dirty storage unit while your son, your only son, is living paycheck to paycheck. He spread his hands out. "Why, Dad? Why are you punishing us? Is it because you hate Tiffany? Is it because you think I am a failure?" I stood up. My knees popped. I walked over to him and put my hands on his shoulders. He was trembling. "I do not hate you, son," I said softly. "And I do not hate Tiffany. I am indifferent to her. But I am scared for you. Scared of what Darius asked, pulling away. Scared that you think money is the answer to your problems," I said. "Scared that you are measuring your worth by the size of an inheritance you didn't earn." "That is not fair," Darius shouted. "It is not about greed. It is about sharing. We are a family. If Mom were here, she would want us to have it. She would want us to be happy. Do not bring your mother into this," I said, my voice hardening. "Your mother knew the value of hard work. She knew that money you do not sweat for is money that burns a hole in your pocket." "Tiffany says you are gaslighting us." Darius spat the word out like he had just learned it. "She says you are pretending to be poor to control us, to make us beg. She says it is abusive. Gaslighting. It is a popular word these days. But in my day, we called it manipulation. And Tiffany was the master of it. She had twisted reality so completely that the man paying all the bills was the abuser, and the woman living rent-free was the victim. I looked at my son. I saw the conflict in him. He was a good man drowning in a bad marriage. "Darius," I said, "listen to me. What is in that locker? It is for the future." "The future," he scoffed. "Yes, the future. When I am dead. When I am gone and cannot help you anymore. That is when you get the key. That is when you get the legacy." "Why not now?" he demanded. "Why do we have to wait for you to die to live our lives?" Because I said, looking him dead in the eye. "Because right now you are not ready for it. Right now you would trade a legacy for a lifestyle. And those are two very different things." Darius stared at me. He shook his head. "Tiffany was right," he whispered. "You are selfish. You are a bitter old man who cares more about his secrets than his family." He turned and walked out. I heard him stomp up the stairs. I heard him talking to Tiffany in the kitchen. I heard her voice rising shrill and angry. 10 minutes later, the basement door opened again. This time it was not Darius. It was Tiffany. She marched down the stairs. She was not wearing her fake sweet smile anymore. Her face was twisted into a mask of pure rage. She looked ugly. Not physically, but spiritually. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs. She pointed a finger at me. "You listen to me, old man," she hissed. "I am done playing games. I am done eating your stale bread and pretending to be grateful." I sat back in my chair. I crossed my legs. "Is that so?" I asked. "Yes, that is so," she screamed. "You think you are teaching us a lesson. You think you are noble. But you are just a hoarder. You are holding on to those emeralds like they are your soul. But they are just rocks, Caleb. Rocks that could change our lives." "They are my rocks," I said calmly. "And as I told Darius, you will get them when I am dead. It is in my will. Everything goes to Darius." She laughed. It was a manic, terrifying sound. "When you are dead," she repeated. She took a step closer. She entered my personal space. I could smell the wine on her breath. "I looked at the actuary tables, Caleb," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You are 73. You have good blood pressure. Your parents lived into their 90s. You could live another 20 years. She leaned down so her face was inches from mine. 20 years of me living in this dump. 20 years of me waiting. 20 years of me being nice to you while you rot in this basement." I looked at her. I saw the darkness in her. It was deep and it was hungry. "I am a patient man, Tiffany," I said. "Well, I am not," she screamed. She grabbed a vase from the shelf next to her. A cheap glass vase that Beatrice used to put wildflowers in. She threw it against the wall. It shattered, showering the room with glass. "I do not want to wait 20 years, she shrieked. "I do not want to change your diapers. I do not want to hear your stories." She was panting now, her chest heaving. The mask was completely gone. The predator was out in the open. "I cannot wait until you die," she screamed, the words echoing off the concrete walls. "I need that money now. I need to invest. I have opportunities. I have debts. I am not going to let you drag me down into the grave with you." She stood there shaking amidst the broken glass. I looked at her. I did not blink. There it was, the confession, the motive, the truth. She didn't care about Darius. She didn't care about family. She had debts. She had a past. And she viewed my death as a business transaction that was taking too long to close. I stood up slowly. I brushed a shard of glass off my sleeve. "You have debts, Tiffany?" I asked quietly. She froze. She realized she had said too much. Her eyes darted around. "We all have debts," she stammered, trying to backtrack. "Student loans, credit cards. That is normal." I nodded. "Normal," I said. I walked past her to the stairs. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I am going to get a broom," I said, "to clean up your mess." I walked up the stairs. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. She was desperate. People with secret debts are always desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. I went to the kitchen closet. I grabbed the broom, but I also grabbed my phone. I sent a text message to my friend in Halifax, the one I hadn't seen in 10 years. It was time to initiate phase 2. She said she couldn't wait for me to die. Well, I wasn't going to die for her, but I was going to disappear. I was going to give her exactly what she wanted: an empty house, a missing father, and a clear path to the storage unit. I walked back down to the basement. Tiffany was gone. She had run back upstairs to regroup. I swept up the glass. I looked at the empty spot on the shelf where the vase had been. "You broke the vase, Tiffany," I whispered. "But you just sealed your fate. Tomorrow I would announce my trip. Tomorrow I would leave the keys on the table. Tomorrow the mouse would find the cheese. And the snap of the trap would be the sweetest sound in the world." Friday morning arrived with a gray sky that matched the somber mood I was projecting. I had spent the last 2 days setting the stage for this performance. I had walked around the house with slumped shoulders, sighing heavily and staring out the window at nothing. I had let my phone ring without answering it. I had created an atmosphere of grief because grief is the best distraction. When people think you are mourning, they stop looking at your hands and they start looking at your weakness. And that is exactly where I wanted Tiffany's eyes to be. I sat at the kitchen table nursing a cup of that terrible instant coffee she forced me to drink. My old leather suitcase was by the door, packed with enough clothes for a week. I had told them the night before that I received a call from Halifax. An old Navy buddy of mine, a man I called Jim, was in hospice care. I told them the cancer had spread to his bones and he didn't have much time left. It was a lie, of course. I didn't know anyone in Halifax, and the only Jim I knew was a bartender in Chicago who died 10 years ago. But the lie had to be specific. It had to be far enough away to keep me out of the house for days, but urgent enough to explain my sudden departure. Tiffany was at the stove making an egg white omelet. She was humming. She always hummed when she thought she was winning. To her, my leaving wasn't a tragedy, it was an opportunity. An empty house meant freedom. It meant she could snoop without looking over her shoulder. It meant she could finally strip the house of whatever dignity it had left. Darius sat across from me. He looked guilty. He always looked guilty these days. He was picking at a piece of dry toast, avoiding my gaze. "When does the flight leave, Dad?" he asked softly. "I am not flying, son," I said, my voice raspy. "I am driving." "Driving?" Darius looked up alarmed. "Dad, Halifax is a 2-day drive. You are 73. You shouldn't be on the road that long by yourself. Let me buy you a ticket." I shook my head. "No," I said. "I need the time to think. And besides, flights are expensive. Tiffany says we need to save money, remember?" I looked at Tiffany. She froze with the spatula in midair. She knew she couldn't argue with that. She had been the one preaching austerity for weeks. If she offered to pay for a flight now, she would look hypocritical. "Driving is fine," she said, turning back to the stove. "It is a scenic route. It will be good for him to clear his head. Just take it slow, Caleb. Stop at motels. Do not push yourself." Her concern was as thin as the paper receipt I had planted. She didn't care if I drove into a ditch. She just wanted me gone. I stood up. I checked my watch. "I should get going," I said. "I want to beat the morning traffic out of the city." I patted my pockets. Wallet, phone, reading glasses. I walked over to the key rack by the back door. The golden key to Unit 404 was hanging there, gleaming under the kitchen lights. I reached out and took the entire ring down. The heavy brass keys jingled. I walked back to the table. I put the keys down on the placemat next to my coffee cup. "I need to get my road atlas from the study," I said. "My phone GPS is unreliable in the mountains." I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving the keys sitting there in plain sight. I went into the study. I counted to 10. 1, 2, 3. I could imagine what was happening in the kitchen. Tiffany's eyes would be locked on that key ring. Her heart would be hammering against her ribs. She would be willing me to forget. She would be praying to a God she didn't believe in, that the old man's memory was finally failing. 4, 5, 6. I grabbed an old road map from the shelf. I rustled some papers, making noise so they knew I was coming back. 7, 8, 9, 10. I walked back into the kitchen. I picked up the map. I picked up my coffee cup and took a final sip. I put the cup down, but I did not pick up the keys. I left them right there next to the stain of the coffee ring. I picked up my suitcase instead. "Well," I said, looking at my son. "Take care of the house, Darius. Water the plants." "I will, Dad," Darius said, standing up to hug me. It was a stiff hug. He smelled of fear and expensive cologne. "Tell Jim. Tell him I said a prayer for him." "I will," I lied. I looked at Tiffany. She was leaning against the counter, gripping the edge of the granite so hard her knuckles were white. She was staring at the keys. She was terrified that if she breathed too loud, I would remember them. "Safe travels, Caleb," she said. Her voice was tight. "Take your time coming back. Really, stay as long as you need." I nodded. "Goodbye, Tiffany," I said. I turned and walked out the back door. I walked to my truck. I threw the suitcase in the passenger seat. I climbed in. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my spare truck key. I had removed it from the main ring 3 days ago for this exact moment. I started the engine. It roared to life with a cloud of blue smoke. I sat there for a moment, letting the truck idle. This was the point of no return. If I drove away now, I was effectively handing them the weapon to destroy themselves. I was giving them permission to commit a crime. Part of me, the father part, wanted to turn off the engine, walk back inside, grab the keys, and scream at them to stop being idiots. I wanted to save them from their own greed. But you cannot save someone who does not want to be saved. You cannot teach a lesson to someone who thinks they already know everything. I looked at the kitchen window. I couldn't see them, but I knew they were there, watching, waiting for the taillights to disappear. I put the truck in reverse. I backed out of the driveway. I shifted into drive. I drove down the street slowly. I watched the house recede in my rearview mirror. The house I built. The house where I raised my family. It looked small from a distance. It looked innocent. But inside it was rotting. I turned the corner. I was out of sight. I kept driving for 5 miles until I reached the interstate on-ramp. But instead of heading north toward Canada, I turned south. I drove to the Airport Plaza Hotel. It was a generic mid-range hotel about 20 minutes from my house. I had booked a room on the 4th floor under my middle name, Robinson James. I paid cash. I parked the truck in the back where it couldn't be seen from the road. I pulled my suitcase out and walked into the lobby. I didn't look like a man going on a vacation. I looked like a man going to work. Up in the room, I didn't unpack. I set up my command center. I opened my laptop. I connected to the hotel Wi-Fi through a VPN. I logged into the security system at Secure Storage. The screen flickered to life. 4 cameras. Crystal clear resolution. I also logged into the baby monitor app I had installed on an old tablet hidden on top of the kitchen cabinets. I had put it there weeks ago, telling them it was a carbon monoxide detector. I put on my headphones. The audio from the kitchen came through. It was static at first, then clear. He is gone. That was Tiffany. Her voice was shaking with excitement. "Are you sure?" Darius asked. "Maybe he is just getting gas. Maybe he will come back for the map." "He took the map, you idiot," Tiffany snapped. "I saw him take it. He is gone, Darius. He is going to Halifax. That is 2 days away. We have the house to ourselves for a week." I heard the sound of keys jingling. She had picked them up. "Look at this," she whispered. "He left it. The old fool actually left it." Darius sounded anxious. "Tiff, maybe we should put it away. If he comes back and sees it gone—" "He won't come back," Tiffany said. "And even if he does, we will just say we put it in the drawer for safekeeping. But he is not coming back today, Darius. This is it. This is the sign of what Darius asked. The sign that it is our turn," Tiffany said. I heard the scraping of a chair. "Get your shoes," she ordered. "What? Why?" Darius asked. "We are going to the storage unit," she said. "Right now." "Tiff, no," Darius pleaded. "We cannot just break into his locker. That is stealing." "It is not stealing if it belongs to the family," she argued. "We are just verifying the assets. We need to know what those emeralds are worth, Darius. We need to know if we can quit our jobs. We need to know if we are rich." Darius was silent. I could hear his heavy breathing. "Do not be a coward, Darius," she said, her voice dropping to that manipulative purr she used so well. "Do it for us. Do it for our future children. Do you want them to grow up in a guest room, or do you want them to grow up in a mansion? Your father is sitting on a fortune and letting us rot. We are just taking what is fair." I closed my eyes. I knew what was coming. I knew he would fold. He always folded. "Okay," Darius whispered. "Okay, let's go." "Yes," Tiffany shrieked. I heard the sound of footsteps running, the sound of the back door slamming. I watched the screen of my laptop. I saw the camera feed from the storage unit. It was quiet. Dust motes dancing in the shaft of light coming from the ventilation grate. The black duffel bag sat in the corner looking heavy and ominous. I took a sip of water. My throat was dry. They were coming. I checked the time. It was 9:30 in the morning. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had saved as Fishing Buddy. It rang twice. "Sheriff Miller here," a gruff voice answered. "Hello, Miller," I said. "It is Cal." "Cal," the sheriff said. "You sound serious. Is the trip on?" "The trip is off," I said. "But the party is on." "Are they moving?" Miller asked. "They are moving," I said. "They just left the house. They are heading to the unit. You want me to intercept?" Miller asked. "No," I said. "Not yet. Let them get there. Let them put the key in the lock." But Cal, Miller said, hesitation in his voice. "You gave them the key. If they have the key, technically, it is not breaking and entering. It is just unauthorized access. It is a civil matter." I smiled at the phone. "I know," I said. "That is why I left the wrong key." There was a silence on the other end. Then Miller laughed. A deep belly laugh. "You son of a gun," he said. "You switched them." "I switched them," I confirmed. "The key on that ring looks exactly like the one for Unit 404. Same brass, same yellow tape. but it opens an old padlock I threw away in 1985. It won't open that door, so they are going to be standing there with a key that doesn't work, Miller said. Exactly, I said. And when a greedy person holds a key that doesn't work, they don't give up, Miller. They get angry, and then they get violent. She has bolt cutters, I added. I saw them in the trunk of her car last week. Bolt cutters, Miller said, his voice turning professional. Possession of burglary tools, attempted forced entry. Now we are talking criminal intent. Exactly, I said. So when do you want us to roll? Miller asked. Wait for my call, I said. I want to see them sweat first. I hung up. I leaned back in the hotel chair. I watched the screen. I was not a father anymore. I was a detective on a stakeout. And the suspects were my own flesh and blood. It was a tragedy. But it was a necessary one. Because sometimes you have to let people break the law to prove they have no respect for it. I waited. The digital clock on the laptop screen ticked away the seconds. Tick, tick, tick. Come on, Tiffany, I whispered. Come and get your inheritance. The room service menu listed a hamburger for $28, which was highway robbery in any other circumstance. But today it was the price of admission for the best seat in the house. I was supposed to be 300 miles away, driving through the mountains of upstate New York on my way to the Canadian border. I had told my son I would be staying in cheap motels and eating gas station sandwiches. Instead, I was sitting in a plush leather chair in a suite on the top floor of the Airport Plaza Hotel, exactly 12 miles from the house I had just left. I had drawn the blackout curtains tight. The room was dark, illuminated only by the blue glow of my laptop screen and the amber light of the bourbon I had poured myself. I do not usually drink before noon, but today was not a usual day. Today was the day I executed Plan B. Plan A had been the gentle approach. Plan A was polishing the key. Plan A was dropping the receipt. Plan A was giving them every opportunity to ask me the truth, to come to me as adults and say, Dad, we are struggling, please help us. If they had done that, if Darius had come to me without Tiffany whispering in his ear, I would have opened the books. I would have shown him the patent. I would have set up a trust fund. I would have saved them. But they didn't choose Plan A. They chose greed. And greed requires a different kind of response. I adjusted the resolution on the screen. My laptop was connected to a dedicated server I had built myself. On the monitor, the feed was split into 4 quadrants. Camera 1 showed the front gate of secure storage. It was a wide-angle shot, crisp and clear, showing the keypad and the sliding iron gate. Camera 2 showed the long concrete corridor of aisle 4. It was empty, just a row of orange metal doors standing like silent sentinels. Camera 3 was inside the unit itself. It showed the pile of bricks in the corner, the table with the old newspapers, and the empty chair where I usually sat. It looked like an interrogation room waiting for a suspect. Camera 4 was the money shot. I had installed a pinhole camera in the light fixture directly above the door of Unit 404. It looked straight down. It would capture the face of anyone standing there trying to work the lock. It would capture the sweat on their brow. It would capture the moment they realized they had made a terrible mistake. I took a sip of the bourbon. It burned on the way down, a pleasant heat that settled in my stomach. I watched the empty screens. Surveillance is 90% boredom and 10% adrenaline. I had spent 40 years mastering the boredom so I could be ready for the adrenaline. I picked up my phone. I dialed a number I knew by heart. Sergeant Miller answered on the first ring. He didn't say hello, he just breathed into the phone, waiting for the code. The weather is clear in Halifax, I said, my voice steady. That means you are in position, Miller rumbled. I am at the plaza, I said. I have eyes on the target location. Any movement, Miller asked. Not yet, I said, checking the time. It has been 2 hours since I left. They waited for me to clear the city limits. They are probably arguing about who is going to hold the flashlight right now. We have a patrol car parked around the corner, Miller said. Officer Henderson. He is young, but he follows orders. He knows not to move until you give the signal. Tell him to stay out of sight, I said. If Tiffany sees a cop car, she will spook. She is a survivor, Miller. Survivors smell traps. We need her to feel safe. We need her to feel like she owns the world. Understood, Miller said. And Caleb. Yeah. Are you sure about this? Once we run the plates and catch them with the tools, it is out of your hands. The district attorney loves these kinds of cases. Domestic burglary, elder financial abuse. They will throw the book at her, and your son, he is going to be an accessory. I looked at the screen. I looked at the empty corridor where my son would soon be walking. I am sure I said softly. Darius needs a wake-up call, Miller. And sometimes the only alarm clock loud enough to wake a man up is the sound of a jail cell door slamming shut. I hung up. I leaned back in the chair. The silence in the hotel room was heavy. I could hear the hum of the mini-fridge and the distant sound of airplanes taking off. People going places. People starting new lives. I wondered what my life would look like tomorrow. I closed my eyes and let my mind drift back to when Darius was 10 years old. He had stolen a candy bar from the corner store. I found the wrapper in his pocket. I didn't yell. I didn't hit him. I walked him back to the store. I made him apologize to the owner. I made him pay for it out of his allowance. He cried the whole way home. He told me he hated me. But that night he hugged me. He told me he was glad I made him do it because the guilt was making his stomach hurt. He was a good boy then. He had a conscience. Tiffany had buried that conscience under layers of entitlement and debt. She had convinced him that the world owed him something. I opened my eyes. I looked at the screen. Movement on camera 1. My heart skipped a beat. A delivery truck pulled up to the gate. The driver punched in a code. The gate opened. He drove through, dropped off a package at the office, and left. False alarm. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Why was I so nervous? I had taken down drug dealers. I had tracked fugitives across state lines. But my hands were shaking. Because this wasn't just a case, this was my legacy. If I was wrong, if they didn't show up, then I was just a paranoid old man spying on an empty storage unit. But I wasn't wrong. I knew Tiffany. I knew the look in her eyes when she saw that receipt. It was the same look a junkie gets when they see a full syringe. She couldn't stop herself. I checked the time on the laptop. 11:15. They were late. Maybe they got cold feet. Maybe Darius grew a spine. Maybe he told her, "No, Tiffany, we are not robbing my father." I felt a flicker of hope. A tiny, desperate flame. "Please, son," I whispered to the empty room. "Please prove me wrong. Turn the car around. Go home. Water the plants like I asked. Be the man I raised you to be." The laptop chimed. A soft digital ping that signaled motion detection in a critical zone. I leaned forward. My face was inches from the screen. Camera 1 was active again. A car had pulled up to the keypad. It wasn't the silver rental sedan she had used before. My heart sank like a stone in deep water. It was a blue Honda Accord, a car I had washed just last week, a car I had helped pay for when he graduated college. It was Darius's car. He was driving. I could see his face through the windshield on the high-definition feed. He looked pale. He looked sick. He was arguing with someone in the passenger seat. Tiffany. She was wearing sunglasses and a scarf like she was some kind of movie star incognito. She was gesturing wildly, pointing at the keypad. Darius rolled down the window. He punched in the code. It was my code. 7319. My birthday. I had never told him the code, but he must have watched me punch it in 100 times over the years. Or maybe Tiffany had dusted the keypad for prints. She was capable of it. The gate shuttered and began to slide open. The blue Honda rolled through. It was done. They were inside the perimeter. I picked up the phone again. My thumb hovered over the call button for Miller. Not yet, I told myself. Wait until they are at the door. Wait until the intent is undeniable. I switched my attention to camera 2. I watched the blue car drive slowly down the long aisle of concrete and steel. It looked out of place here. It looked like a shark swimming in a swimming pool. The car stopped. It stopped right in front of Unit 404. I saw the brake lights flare red. I saw the doors open. Tiffany got out first. She didn't look around. She didn't check for cameras. She was too focused on the prize. She marched straight to the orange door. She slapped her hand against the metal like she was claiming it. Darius got out slowly. He stood by the driver's side door. He looked back toward the gate. He looked nervous. He was wringing his hands. I could see them clearly on camera 4 now, the overhead view. Tiffany turned to Darius. I couldn't hear them, but I could read her body language. She was demanding the key. Darius reached into his pocket. He pulled out the brass key with the yellow tape, the decoy key. He handed it to her. She snatched it. She shoved it into the padlock. I held my breath. She twisted it. Nothing happened. She twisted it again harder. She jiggled it. She shook the lock. I watched her frustration mount. She kicked the door. She turned and screamed something at Darius. Darius threw his hands up. He was explaining that it was the key I left. He was innocent. Tiffany tried one more time. She used two hands, turning the key with all her strength. It didn't budge. She pulled the key out and threw it on the ground. It skittered across the concrete. I sat back in my chair. This was the moment. The exit ramp. The key didn't work. They could go home. They could say they tried to check on things, but the lock was jammed. They could walk away with no crime committed other than trespass. Go home. Darius, I whispered. Just get in the car and leave. Darius picked up the key. He looked at Tiffany. He pointed to the car. He was suggesting they leave. I could see the relief on his face. He thought it was over. But Tiffany wasn't done. She walked to the trunk of the car. She popped it open. She reached inside. When she turned around, she wasn't holding a key. She wasn't holding a purse. She was holding a pair of red-handled bolt cutters. They were massive, 3 feet long, heavy-duty industrial cutters capable of snapping hardened steel like a twig. She walked back to the door. She held the cutters up. She looked like an executioner. Darius grabbed her arm. He tried to stop her. She shoved him away. She shoved him hard enough that he stumbled back against the car. She pointed the cutters at his face. She said something short and vicious. Darius shrank back. He lowered his head. He surrendered. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. It was hot and angry. She had just threatened my son with a weapon. She had just crossed the final line. I picked up the phone. I picked up the Miller, I said, my voice cold as the grave. Go ahead, Miller answered. They are at the door, I said. She has bolt cutters. She is going to cut the lock. We are rolling, Miller said. ETA 2 minutes. I watched the screen. Tiffany positioned the jaws of the cutter around the shackle of the padlock. She strained. Her face turned red. She put her whole body weight into it. I didn't look away. I forced myself to watch. I watched as the woman who promised to love and cherish my son prepared to break into my life. I watched as my son stood there and let her do it. And as I watched, I felt the last of my hesitation vanish. Snap. The lock broke. It fell to the ground with a clatter I could almost hear from 10 miles away. Tiffany dropped the cutters. She grabbed the handle of the rolling door. She heaved it upward. The door rolled up. The sunlight flooded into the dark unit, and the trap was sprung. The screen on my laptop was small, but the resolution was high enough to see the sweat beading on my son's forehead. He was standing in the concrete corridor of secure storage, his expensive sneakers shifting nervously on the dusty floor. Next to him, Tiffany looked like a woman possessed. She was jamming the key I had left on the kitchen table into the padlock of Unit 404. I sat in my hotel room 12 miles away holding a glass of bourbon that I had not taken a sip of in 20 minutes. I was leaning forward, mesmerized by the tragedy unfolding in high definition. It is a strange feeling to watch your own family commit a crime. It is a mix of disappointment and grim satisfaction. Like watching a bridge collapse after you told everyone the foundation was cracked. On the screen, Tiffany twisted the key again. I could see the muscles in her forearm tense. She was using enough force to break a normal key, but that old brass key was solid. It wouldn't break and it wouldn't turn. It just sat there, stubborn and unyielding, mocking her greed. It is not working, she screamed. The microphone in the corridor picked up her voice clearly. It echoed off the metal doors, amplifying her rage. Darius took a step toward her. He looked terrified. He kept glancing toward the main gate, expecting the police or the owner to come round the corner. Maybe it is the wrong key, Tiff, he said, his voice trembling. Maybe he has a different one. Or maybe we should just go. Tiffany spun on him. Her face was flushed. Her sunglasses had slid down her nose, revealing eyes that were wide and wild. It is not the wrong key, she hissed. It has the yellow tape. It has the number. He left it for us, Darius. He wanted us to find it. Then why doesn't it open? Darius asked. Because it is old, she snapped. Or because he is playing games. But I am not playing Darius. I drove all the way out here. I put up with his stories. I ate his cheap food. I am not leaving without those emeralds. She kicked the door. The hollow boom sounded like a gunshot. Darius flinched. Tiffany, please, he begged. This feels wrong. We are breaking in. Even if it is Dad, it feels like stealing. Let's just go home. We can ask him when he gets back. We can ask him to open it for us. Ask him, she laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You think he's going to just hand it over. He is a hoarder, Darius. He is a miser. He would rather die than give us a dime. We have to take it. It is the only way." She jiggled the lock one last time. She groaned in frustration. Then she pulled the key out and threw it on the ground. "Fine," she said, breathing hard. "We do it the hard way." She marched back to the car. I watched on the monitor as she popped the trunk of the Honda. My son's car. The car I helped him pick out because it was safe and reliable. Now it was a getaway vehicle. She reached inside. She pushed aside the yoga mats and the reusable grocery bags. She pulled out the tool she had hidden there days ago. The bolt cutters were red and black. They were 36 inches long, the kind of tool construction workers use to cut rebar. In Tiffany's small hands they looked massive. They looked lethal. She slammed the trunk shut. Darius saw the cutters and his jaw dropped. He backed away from her, putting his hands up as if she were pointing a gun at him. "Where did you get those?" he stammered. "Home Depot," she said, walking past him. $60. A small investment for a big return." "Tiffany!" "No," Darius shouted, moving to block her path. "You cannot cut the lock. That is destruction of property. That is a felony." "Get out of my way, Darius," she warned him, hefting the cutters. "I am serious," Darius said, finding a shred of backbone somewhere deep inside. "I cannot let you do this. Dad will see the broken lock. He will know. Let him know," she screamed. "Once we have the emeralds, who cares what he knows? We will be gone. We will be in a new house. He can sue us if he wants. We will hire better lawyers." She tried to push past him, but Darius held his ground. For a moment I was proud of him. He was trying. He was trying to stop the train before it went off the cliff. "I am calling him," Darius said, pulling his phone out. "I am calling Dad. I am going to tell him what is happening. Maybe if he knows how crazy you are acting, he will just come back and open it." "Do not call him," Tiffany shrieked, lunging for the phone. But Darius was faster. He stepped back, dialing with shaking fingers. In the hotel room, my phone buzzed on the table next to the laptop. Caller ID, Darius. I looked at it. I looked at the screen where Tiffany was now pacing like a tiger in a cage, swinging the bolt cutters back and forth. I picked up the phone. "Hello, son," I said, my voice calm. "Dad?" Darius screamed. "Dad, you have to come back. Right now." I took a sip of the bourbon. It was warm now, but I didn't care. "I am in Pennsylvania." "Son," I lied. "I am halfway to Halifax. What is the emergency? Did the house burn down?" "No," Darius gasped. "It is Tiffany. We are at the storage unit." I let silence hang on the line. I wanted him to hear his own words. I wanted him to hear the betrayal in them. "The storage unit," I repeated slowly. "Why are you at my storage unit, Darius?" Darius started crying. I could hear the sobs mixed with his heavy breathing. "She found the key, Dad. The one on the table. She made me drive her here. She thinks the emeralds are inside." I watched the screen. Tiffany had stopped pacing. She was staring at Darius, waiting to see what I would say. She looked dangerous. "But the key doesn't work," Dad, Darius cried. "And now she has bolt cutters. She bought bolt cutters, Dad. She is going to cut the lock." He lowered his voice to a whisper. "She is crazy, Dad. I have never seen her like this. Please tell me what to do. Should I tackle her? Should I call the cops?" I looked at the image of my son. He looked so small standing next to that orange door. He was a boy trying to navigate a man's world without a map. I felt a pang of sadness. I wanted to tell him to run. I wanted to tell him to get in the car and drive away and never look back. But that wouldn't save him. If he ran now, he would always wonder. He would always wonder if there really was a fortune in that locker. He would always wonder if his father was a liar. And Tiffany would always have her claws in him, whispering that I cheated them. No, the only way to save him was to let him see the bottom. Darius the First said softly, "Yeah, Dad, is she standing right there?" "Yes, she has the cutters in her hands, Dad." "Look at her, son," I said. "Really look at her. Is this the woman you married? Is this the mother of your future children? A woman holding a weapon ready to break into an old man's life." Darius looked at Tiffany. On the monitor I saw him stare at her. She glared back, her jaw set in stone. "I don't know, Dad," he whispered. "I don't know who she is anymore." "Then let her do it," I said. "What?" Darius asked, his voice squeaking with shock. "Let her cut the lock," I said. "But Dad, the emeralds—" "There are no emeralds, Darius," I said. Darius went silent. "What do you mean?" "I mean let her cut the lock," I said firmly. "Step aside. Do not help her. Do not hold the light. Just stand back and watch." "But why, Dad?" Why would you let her destroy your property? Because, son, I said, leaning closer to the phone, my eyes locked on the image of Tiffany raising the heavy tool. Because sometimes a man cannot stop a woman when she wants to self-destruct. You cannot save someone from their own greed, Darius. You can only get out of the blast radius. Blast radius, Darius asked, confused. Just stand back, I ordered. Let her cut it. And Darius, yeah, Dad. When that door opens, do not look at the locker. Look at her face. That is where the real reveal is going to be. I hung up. I watched Darius slowly lower the phone. He looked at it for a second, then put it in his pocket. He looked at Tiffany. He said something to her. I couldn't hear it, but I saw him step back. He walked all the way to the other side of the corridor, leaning against the opposite wall. He crossed his arms. Tiffany looked surprised. She had expected a fight. She had expected him to beg. But when he stepped aside, a smile spread across her face. A triumphant, greedy smile. She thought she had won. She thought I had given permission because I was scared. She thought I had surrendered. She turned back to the door. She lifted the bolt cutters. The heavy jaws opened like the mouth of a hungry beast. She fit them around the shackle of the padlock. She took a deep breath. She braced her legs. I watched her face on the overhead camera. Her eyes were wide, her teeth were bared. It wasn't the face of a content creator. It wasn't the face of a blushing bride. It was the face of a thief. I put my glass down. Do it, Tiffany, I whispered to the empty hotel room. Show him who you really are. On the screen, she squeezed the handles. Her arms shook with the effort. And then, snap. The lock sheared in two. The metal clattered onto the concrete. Tiffany dropped the cutters. The sound echoed like a bell tolling for a funeral. She didn't wait. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed the handle at the bottom of the orange door. She heaved it upward. The door rolled up with a screech of metal on metal. Darkness gave way to light, and Tiffany stepped into the trap. The sound of a bolt cutter snapping through hardened steel is not a loud noise. In the movies they make it sound like a gunshot, but in real life it is a dull thud, a dry mechanical snap like a bone breaking inside a body. I sat in my hotel room 12 miles away and watched the feed on my laptop screen. The audio from the microphone in the corridor picked it up perfectly. It was the sound of a line being crossed. It was the sound of a felony being committed by my daughter-in-law, while my son stood 5 feet away and watched. The broken padlock hit the concrete floor with a heavy clatter. It spun for a moment, a piece of useless brass that had done its job. It had held the line until the very last second. Tiffany dropped the bolt cutters. The heavy red tool landed next to the lock with a crash that echoed down the long metal hallway. She did not care about the noise anymore. She did not care about the security cameras or the police or the fact that she was breaking into a facility that required a code to enter. She was past the point of rationality. She was in the grip of the fever. I watched her hands. They were trembling, not from the exertion of cutting the lock, but from the adrenaline. It was the same tremor I used to see in gamblers at the racetrack right before their horse crossed the finish line. She was vibrating with anticipation. In her mind, she was already spending the money. In her mind, that corrugated metal door was the only thing standing between her and a life of leisure. She was imagining the emeralds. She was picturing the heavy gold settings, the deep green stones, the way they would look against her skin. She was imagining the resignation letter she would throw in her boss's face. She was imagining the new car, the new house, the new life where she was the queen and everyone else was a servant. She stepped forward. She wiped her sweaty palms on her designer jeans. She reached down and grabbed the handle at the bottom of the orange door. Darius was still standing against the opposite wall. He looked sick. He had his arms crossed over his chest, hugging himself as if he were freezing. He was looking at the door with a mixture of terror and curiosity. He did not want to steal from me, but he wanted to know. The seed of doubt Tiffany had planted had grown into a tree with deep roots. He needed to know if his father was a liar. He needed to know if I had really hoarded a fortune while he struggled. "Open it!" Tiffany screamed. Her voice was shrill, hysterical. "Open the damn door!" She heaved upward. The door was on a spring-loaded track, but it was old and rusty. It resisted for a second, then flew up with a violent screech of metal on metal. It slammed into the stops at the top of the frame with a bang that shook the camera mounted above it. Dust motes danced in the sudden shaft of sunlight that flooded the unit. Tiffany stood there panting. She was staring into the darkness of Unit 404. Her chest was heaving. Her eyes were wide, adjusting to the gloom. I took a sip of my bourbon. The liquid was warm in my mouth. I leaned closer to the screen. "What do you see, Tiffany?" I whispered. "Tell me what you see." She stepped inside. She disappeared from the corridor camera and appeared on the interior camera view. She stood in the center of the room. She looked left, she looked right. She looked at the floor, then she screamed. It was not a scream of joy, it was not a scream of triumph, it was a scream of pure, unadulterated rage. "Where is it?" she shrieked. "Where is the money? Where are the bags?" She spun around in a circle. Her hands were clawing at the air. The unit was empty of treasure. There were no stacks of cash. There were no velvet boxes containing emerald necklaces. There were no gold bars. There was a folding card table in the center of the room. On the table sat a half-empty thermos of coffee and a stack of old newspapers. Next to the table was my camping chair, the canvas stretched from years of use. In the corner sat the pile of bricks I had carried in week after week, the bricks she thought were gold. Tiffany ran to the pile of bricks. She kicked them. She grabbed the black duffel bag that was folded on top of them. She shook it. It was empty. She threw it against the wall. "No," she screamed. "No, no, no." He moved it. The bastard moved it. She fell to her knees. She started clawing at the concrete floor as if she could dig through it with her fingernails. She was looking for a loose stone, a trapdoor, anything. Darius walked slowly into the unit. He stood in the doorway silhouetted by the sun. He looked around the small, dusty room. He looked at the chair where his father sat every Sunday. He looked at the thermos. He looked at the newspaper open to the crossword puzzle. He realized the truth before she did. "There is nothing here, Tiff," he said softly. His voice echoed in the emptiness. "It is just a room." He hit it. Tiffany yelled, scrambling to her feet. She looked wild. Her hair was coming loose from her ponytail. Her eyes were manic. He knew we were coming. He moved it to another unit. Or he buried it. "We have to find it, Darius. Search the walls. Tap on the panels. Maybe there is a false back." She ran to the side wall. She started banging her fists against the corrugated metal. It made a hollow thumping sound. "There is nothing there," Darius said, stepping into the room. He sounded tired. He sounded like a man waking up from a long fever dream. "Look at this place, Tiff. It is just a hangout. He comes here to read the paper. He comes here to drink coffee." Why, Tiffany screamed, spinning on him. Why would he drive 20 minutes to read a paper in a dirty storage locker? Why would he carry bricks back and forth? "Because he wanted peace," Darius said. He looked at the chair. "He wanted to get away from us." "From you." "Shut up," Tiffany spat. "You are so stupid. You believe him. You believe this stage set. He staged this Darius. He polished that key to mock us. He planted that receipt to torture us. He is a sick old man." She kicked the folding table. The thermos fell over, spilling cold coffee onto the concrete. "Where are the emeralds?" she howled at the ceiling. "I know you can hear me, Caleb. I know you are laughing. Where are they?" I was not laughing. I was watching with a heavy heart. She was right. I had staged it. But I had not staged it to torture them. I had staged it to reveal them. Darius walked over to the pile of bricks. He picked one up. It was just a red clay paving stone. He weighed it in his hand. "It was just bricks," he whispered. "We broke into a storage unit for bricks." He looked at Tiffany. "We committed a felony for bricks, Tiff." Tiffany wasn't listening. She was panting, looking around for something, anything to destroy. Then she stopped. She was facing the back wall of the unit. Until now, she had been too focused on the floor, too focused on finding the treasure to look up. But now, as the red mist of her rage began to clear, she saw it. The back wall was not bare metal like the others. I had covered it with a large sheet of corkboard, and on that board, I had pinned a collage of photographs and documents. From the camera angle on my laptop, I could see Tiffany's back stiffen. I saw her head tilt. "What is that?" she whispered. She walked slowly toward the back wall. Her steps were hesitant now. The frantic energy was replaced by a creeping dread. Darius looked up from the brick in his hand. He saw her staring at the wall. He put the brick down. He walked up beside her. They stood there side by side, looking at the display I had curated for them. It was not a random collection. It was a timeline. It was a biography of a lie. The photos were arranged in chronological order. The first photo was grainy, taken from a security camera in a Miami nightclub 5 years ago. It showed Tiffany wearing a dress that left little to the imagination, sitting on the lap of a man 3 times her age. She was smiling that same predatory smile. The next document was a copy of a police report, a mugshot. It was Tiffany, but the hair was blonde and the name under the photo said Jessica Smith. The charge was credit card fraud and identity theft. Then there were the bank statements. Not mine, hers. Statements showing maxed out credit cards, loans from payday lenders, and transfers to offshore gambling sites. Then there was the medical report. The one she had used to convince Darius she couldn't work because of a mysterious autoimmune condition. I had highlighted the section where the doctor noted patient shows no clinical signs of illness. Possible malingering. And finally, right in the center of the board was a large, glossy photo of Tiffany and Darius at their wedding. But I had drawn a red line through Darius. And next to Tiffany, I had pinned a printout of a text message she had sent to her friend the night before the wedding. The text read, "He is a bore, and he is broke, but the dad has money. Once the old man kicks the bucket, I am cashing out and moving to LA." I watched them on the screen. I saw Tiffany reach out. Her hand was shaking violently now. She touched the mugshot. She touched the face of Jessica Smith. "No," she whispered. "No. How did he get this?" This record was sealed. Darius was reading the text message. I could see his head moving as he read the words. I could see his shoulders slump. He turned to look at her. "Jessica?" he asked. His voice was barely a whisper, but the microphone caught it. "Who is Jessica?" Tiffany spun around. Her face was pale. All the blood had drained out of her. She looked like a ghost. "It is fake," she stammered. "It is all fake, Darius. He photoshopped it. He is trying to frame me. He is trying to break us up." "Frame you?" Darius asked, pointing at the wall. "Frame you with a police report from 5 years ago. Frame you with your own text messages." He stepped closer to the wall. He looked at the mugshot. "That is you, Tiff. That is your nose. That is your scar on the chin. You told me you got that scar falling off a bike when you were 6. This report says you got it in a bar fight in Tampa." Tiffany backed away. She backed right into the folding table, knocking the chair over. "Darius, please," she cried, tears streaming down her face now. Real tears this time, tears of fear. "You cannot believe him. He is a detective. He knows how to fake evidence. He hates me." "He doesn't hate you," Darius said, his voice rising. "He protected me from you. He knew. He knew the whole time." He looked around the room. He looked at the cameras. He looked right into the lens of the one mounted in the corner. "Dad," he shouted. "Dad, I know you are watching." I leaned toward the microphone on my laptop. I pressed the talk button. "I am watching, son," I said. My voice boomed out of the hidden speaker in the unit. It sounded godlike in the small metal room. Tiffany screamed and covered her ears. "I watched you break the lock," I continued. "I watched you threaten my son with bolt cutters. And now I am watching you look at your own reflection, Tiffany. Or should I call you Jessica?" Tiffany looked around wildly, searching for the speaker. "You illegal spy!" she shrieked. "You cannot do this!" "This is stalking. I will sue you." "You broke into my property, Jessica," I said calmly. "You committed burglary. You committed vandalism. And you did it while violating your probation from Florida." "Probation?" Darius asked, looking at her. "You are on probation. She lied to you about everything, son," I said. "She isn't an influencer. She is a grifter. She isn't from a wealthy family in Connecticut. She is a fugitive from a fraud charge in Miami. She married you because she thought I had a fortune and she needed a place to hide." "Liar!" she screamed, running toward the camera. "I will kill you!" She grabbed the folding chair and threw it at the camera. The image shook violently, then went static for a second before stabilizing. "Stop it!" Darius yelled, grabbing her arms. "Stop it, Tiffany! It is over! Look at the wall! It is all there!" He pointed to the text message. "You called me a bore," he said, his voice breaking. "You said you were just waiting for him to die." Tiffany stopped fighting. She went limp in his arms. She looked up at him, her eyes pleading. "Baby, I didn't mean it. I was just venting. I love you. We can fix this. We can explain. Just help me destroy this. Help me burn these pictures." She tried to pull away toward the wall. "We can burn it all," she said, her eyes lighting up with a new manic plan. "We can set fire to the unit. We can say it was an accident. The evidence will be gone." Darius pushed her away. He looked at her with disgust. "You want to burn down my father's property?" he asked. "It is the only way," she hissed. Just then a loud beep echoed through the unit. "Beep, beep, beep." Tiffany froze. "What is that?" she whispered. "That I said through the speaker is the silent alarm. It triggers when the door is opened without the code." I paused. "It has a 3-minute delay." Tiffany looked at her watch, her face crumbled. 3 minutes, she gasped. I picked up my bourbon. The police are not coming from the station, I said. They were waiting around the corner. From outside the unit came the sound of tires crunching on gravel, then the sound of car doors slamming. Then a voice amplified by a megaphone. This is the police. Come out with your hands up. Tiffany looked at the door. The sun was shining bright outside, but for her it was the end of the world. She looked at Darius. Help me, she begged. Tell them you did it. Tell them it was your idea. You are his son. He won't press charges against you. Please, Darius. If I go back to jail... Darius looked at her. He looked at the wall of lies. He looked at the bolt cutters on the floor. He turned his back on her. He walked toward the open door. He put his hands in the air. Darius, she screamed. Do not leave me. He didn't look back. He walked out into the sunlight, leaving her alone in the dusty room with nothing but her own ugly truth staring back at her from the wall. I watched on the screen as she collapsed to the floor, sobbing. Checkmate, Jessica, I whispered. I closed the laptop. The show was over. Now it was time for the cleanup. You always know the exact moment a criminal realizes the game is rigged. It is a physical reaction. Their shoulders drop, their chin pulls back, and the color drains from their face like water circling a drain. I had seen it 1,000 times in interrogation rooms and witness stands, but I had never seen it with quite this level of satisfaction. I was sitting in my hotel room, staring at the laptop screen, watching the high-definition feed of my storage unit. The unit was silent now, except for the heavy breathing of 2 people who had just realized they broke into a tomb, not a bank vault. Tiffany was standing in front of the back wall. Her flashlight beam was shaking violently, dancing across the corkboard I had installed there. She had walked in expecting to see shelves of gold bars or stacks of cash wrapped in plastic. She had expected to see her future. Instead, she was staring at her past. And the past is a ghost that never stops haunting you, especially when you have tried so hard to bury it under expensive clothes and a fake name. I took a slow sip of my bourbon. The liquid was amber and smooth, a stark contrast to the jagged reality unfolding on the screen. Look at it, Tiffany, I whispered to the empty room. Look at the masterpiece I built just for you. Darius was standing a few feet behind her. He held a brick in his hand, a red clay paving stone that he had picked up from the pile. He looked confused. He looked like a man who had woken up in a foreign country where he did not speak the language. He walked closer to the wall, drawn by the gravity of Tiffany's silence. What is it, Tiff? He asked, his voice echoing off the metal walls. What are those pictures? Tiffany did not answer. She could not answer. Her vocal cords were frozen by shock. She reached out a trembling hand to touch the first photograph on the left. It was a grainy image printed on high-quality photo paper. I had paid a private investigator in Miami $500 for that file. It showed a nightclub VIP section. The lighting was low and purple, but the faces were clear. There was Tiffany, 5 years younger, her hair dyed a platinum blonde, wearing a dress that was little more than a whisper of fabric. She was sitting on the lap of a man who looked old enough to be her grandfather. He was wearing a linen suit and a gold watch that cost more than my truck. Tiffany was laughing, pouring champagne into his mouth while slipping his wallet out of his jacket pocket. I saw Darius lean in. He squinted. Is that you?" he whispered. Tiffany snatched her hand back as if the photo had burned her. "No," she stammered. Her voice was thin and reedy. "It looks like me, but it is not. It is a deep fake. Your father is sick, Darius. He photoshopped my face onto some stripper's body." Darius looked at the photo again. Then he looked at Tiffany. He looked at the small mole on her left shoulder, the one she usually covered with makeup. He looked back at the photo. The mole was there, pixel perfect. "He is not good with computers," Darius said slowly. "He still types with 2 fingers. How could he fake this?" "He hired someone," Tiffany screamed, spinning around. "He hates me, Darius. He wants to ruin me." She tried to rip the photo off the wall, but I had used heavy-duty staples. The paper tore, leaving the corner still attached. Darius grabbed her wrist. "Stop it. Let me see the rest." He pushed past her. He shined his own phone light on the center of the board. This was the centerpiece, the document that tied it all together. It was a standard police booking sheet from the Miami-Dade Police Department dated 4 years ago. In the center was the mugshot, front view and profile view. No makeup, no filters, just a young woman with hard eyes and a split lip looking defiantly into the camera. Under the photo, the name was typed in bold black letters. Jessica Marie Smith, D.O.B., March 12, 1996. Charges: grand larceny, credit card fraud, identity theft. Darius stared at the face. It was the face he woke up next to every morning. It was the face he had kissed at the altar. But the name was wrong. Jessica, he whispered. Who is Jessica Smith? Tiffany let out a sob. It was a guttural sound, a sound of a trapped animal. Darius. Please, she begged, grabbing his arm. That was a mistake. It was a misunderstanding. I was young. I was hanging out with the wrong crowd. They used my ID. I didn't do it. Darius pulled his arm away. He looked at the booking sheet again. He read the details. Alias, Tiffany St. James. Tiffany Miller. Jessica Jones. He looked at her. His eyes were wide with horror. You are not Tiffany, he said. His voice broke. You lied to me. Your name is not even Tiffany. It is a stage name, she cried. For my career. Everyone does it. You told me you were from a wealthy family in Connecticut, Darius shouted. You told me your parents died in a sailing accident. You told me you had a trust fund that was tied up in legal battles. He pointed at the sheet. This says you are from a trailer park in Tampa. This says your father is serving 20 years for armed robbery. Tiffany backed away until she hit the folding table. She knocked over the thermos again. It doesn't matter, she shrieked. That is the past. I reinvented myself. Is that a crime? To want a better life. To want to leave the trash behind. It is a crime when you build it on lies, Darius said. He turned back to the wall. He wasn't done. He was like a man picking at a scab he couldn't stop until he saw the blood. He moved his light to the third section of the board. This was the one that I knew would hurt him the most. The financial crimes were bad, but the emotional crimes were unforgivable. Pinned to the cork was a copy of a medical file. It was a fake file, one that Tiffany had created herself using Photoshop. I had found the original draft on her laptop when she left it unlocked in the kitchen. It was a diagnosis for stage 3 lymphoma. Next to it was a printout of an email chain between Tiffany, or Jessica, and her previous boyfriend, a man named Marcus. I read the emails along with Darius. Subject: treatment costs. From Jessica Smith to Marcus King. Marcus, the doctor, says I need the new experimental treatment in Switzerland. It costs $50,000. If I don't get it, I will die. Please, baby, I know you have the savings for your shop, but this is my life. I will pay you back. I swear. Next to the email was a copy of a wire transfer. $50,000 from Marcus King to an account in the Cayman Islands under the name Jessica Smith, and below that a photo from her social media dated 2 weeks after the transfer. It showed Tiffany on a beach in Bora Bora, holding a cocktail, looking tan and healthy. The caption read, "Living my best life." #blessed, #survivor. Darius made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He leaned against the wall for support. You did it to him too, he whispered. Tiffany was silent now. She was huddled in the corner, hugging herself, shivering. You told me you had an autoimmune disease, Darius said, turning to look at her. Last month. You told me you needed $10,000 for special treatments in Mexico. That is why I maxed out my credit cards. That is why I asked Dad for money. He walked toward her. He looked dangerous. For the first time in his life, my son looked dangerous. You were never sick, he said. You were never dying. You were just stealing. Tiffany looked up. Her mascara was running down her face in black streaks, making her look like a clown in a nightmare. I needed the money, she whimpered. I have debts, Darius. Bad debts. The people from Miami, They found me. They said if I didn't pay, they would hurt me. They would hurt you. I did it to protect us, liar, Darius screamed. The sound echoed in the small metal room, vibrating through the speakers of my laptop. You did it for yourself, he yelled. You did it for the clothes, for the car, for the image. You drained Marcus dry and then you moved on to me. You are a parasite. He looked around the room. He looked at the pile of bricks. He looked at the empty chair. Dad knew, he said. His voice was full of awe. He knew the whole time. That is why he brought the bricks. That is why he polished the key. He was testing you. He looked at the wall one last time. He calls it the wall of truth, he whispered, reading the label I had put at the top of the board. I leaned forward in my chair. Yes, son, I said softly. It is the truth. The ugly, jagged truth that you refused to see because she was pretty and she told you what you wanted to hear. Tiffany stood up. She wiped her face. The fear was turning into anger now. The cornered rat was getting ready to bite. So what, she spat. So I have a past. So I lied. Big deal. You are no Saint Darius. You are a weak, pathetic man who lives in his daddy's basement. You were an easy mark. She laughed a cruel, harsh sound. I picked you because you were soft, she sneered. I picked you because I thought your old man was sitting on a pile of cash and he would die soon. But turns out the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You are both useless. She looked at the bolt cutters on the floor. She looked at the door. Well, the gig is up, she said, straightening her jacket. I am leaving. I am taking the car, and if you try to stop me, I will tell the cops you hit me. I will tell them you forced me to break in. Who are they going to believe? The crying wife or the husband with the temper? She started to walk toward the door. Darius didn't move to stop her. He just watched her go. He looked defeated, but I wasn't defeated. I reached for the microphone button on my laptop. Going somewhere. Jessica, I asked, my voice booming through the unit. Tiffany froze in the doorway. She looked up at the camera, her eyes narrowing. Go to hell, Caleb, she shouted. I checked the monitor showing the exterior view. A black and white patrol car was turning the corner. No sirens, just silent rolling justice. I think you might want to wait, I said. Your ride is here. Tiffany looked out into the sunlight. She saw the car. She saw the uniform. She saw the handcuffs glinting on the officer's belt. She took a step back into the unit. She looked at Darius. Hide me, she hissed. Darius looked at her. He looked at the wall of mugshots. He looked at the fake cancer diagnosis. He shook his head slowly. No, he said. He walked past her out into the corridor. He walked toward the police car with his hands raised. Tiffany stood alone in the center of the unit, surrounded by her lies. She looked at the wall one last time. She looked at the face of Jessica Smith, and for the first time in her life she realized that she couldn't run away from herself. The trap had snapped, and it had caught exactly what it was designed to catch. Tiffany stood alone in the center of the dusty concrete box that was Unit 404. Her husband had just walked out on her. Her lies were pinned to the wall like butterflies in a science exhibit, and the silence in the room was deafening. It was the silence of a life collapsing. I sat in my hotel room holding my breath, watching her on the high-definition screen. I knew what she was going to do next. A narcissist, when cornered, does not reflect, and they do not repent. They attack. They try to destroy the mirror that is showing them their own ugly reflection. She looked at the wall. She looked at the mugshot of Jessica Smith. The woman in the photo looked back at her with hard, dead eyes. It was a face she thought she had buried under expensive foundation and a new last name. Seeing it there, exposed and undeniable, broke something inside her. She screamed. It was a raw, animalistic sound that tore through her throat. She lunged at the corkboard. Her manicured fingernails dug into the glossy paper of the police report. She ripped it down. She tore it into shreds, throwing the confetti of her criminal record onto the dirty floor. She clawed at the photos of her with the old man in Miami. She ripped down the fake medical records. She was thrashing wildly, panting and sobbing, trying to erase the evidence of who she really was. But she made a mistake. A critical, tactical error that I had anticipated. In her frenzy to destroy the wall, she grabbed the edge of the corkboard itself. She pulled on it with all her strength, trying to rip the entire display down from the metal studs. Click. It was a small sound, a tiny mechanical switch disengaging behind the board. And then the world inside Unit 404 exploded with noise. Beep, beep, beep. It was not a normal burglar alarm. It was not the lazy, rhythmic wail of a car alarm that people ignore in parking lots. This was a sonic weapon. It was a 120 decibel piezo siren that I had wired directly to the frame of the corkboard. It operated on a frequency designed to induce nausea and disorientation. It was the same system used in high-security evidence lockers. Tiffany clamped her hands over her ears. She dropped to her knees. The sound was bouncing off the corrugated metal walls, amplifying itself, creating a vortex of noise that made it impossible to think, impossible to plan, and impossible to breathe. She looked up at the ceiling, her eyes wide with terror. She was looking for the source. She was looking for a way to make it stop, but she could not stop it. Because the trigger she had just pulled did not just activate a siren. It sent a silent digital signal. A signal that traveled through the hardwired connection I had buried in the conduit. A signal that bypassed the local storage facility's security desk and went straight to a private server that then auto-dialed the local precinct with a pre-recorded priority. One message. I took a sip of my bourbon and watched the chaos. I felt a grim satisfaction. She wanted to make a noise in the world. She wanted to be noticed. Well, now she had the attention of every eardrum within a 3-block radius. Tiffany crawled toward the door. She was trying to escape the noise. She scrambled over the pile of bricks she had kicked earlier. She dragged herself toward the sunlight. But as she reached the threshold, she stopped, because the noise inside the unit was being answered by a noise outside. Whatever disorientation she felt from my alarm was instantly replaced by a cold, sharp clarity as the sound of approaching sirens cut through the morning air. Wail, wail, wail. They were close. They were not miles away. They were seconds away. Tiffany froze. She looked out into the corridor. She saw Darius standing by the police car that was already parked there. He was talking to an officer. He was pointing at the unit. She scrambled back inside. She huddled in the corner under the wall of truth she had tried to destroy. She looked like a child hiding from a monster. But the monster was not under the bed. The monster was the law. What she did not know, what she could not possibly have known, was the specific classification of Unit 404. When I retired from private investigation, I kept my license active. I kept my certifications. And I registered this storage unit not as personal property, but as an off-site evidence locker for Robinson Security investigations. In the eyes of the law, breaking into a personal storage unit is a property crime. It is burglary. It is bad, but it is manageable. A good lawyer can plead it down to trespassing. But breaking into a registered evidence locker is different. It is a federal offense. It is tampering with an active investigation. It is obstruction of justice. I had set the trap with layers. Layer 1 was the greed. Layer 2 was the emotional exposure. But Layer 3 was the legal Iron Maiden. The sirens grew louder. The blue and red lights began to bounce off the metal walls of the hallway, creating a strobe effect inside the unit. The flashing lights illuminated Tiffany's face in jerky, horrific snapshots. 1 second she was in darkness. The next she was bathed in the harsh light of judgment. She looked at the bolt cutters lying on the floor, the heavy red tool she had used to snap the lock. It sat there like a smoking gun. She crawled over to it. She grabbed the handle. For a second I thought she was going to try to hide it, maybe shove it under the pile of newspapers, or maybe she was going to use it as a weapon. But then she dropped it. She realized the futility. Her fingerprints were on it. Her DNA was on it. The video of her using it was safely stored on my cloud server. There was no way out. I leaned closer to my laptop screen. "This is the moment, Jessica," I whispered. "This is the moment you realize that you are not the hunter. You are the prey." I watched as 2 uniformed officers appeared in the doorway of the unit. They had their hands on their holsters. They moved with caution. They saw the broken lock. They saw the woman cowering in the corner amidst torn photographs and a pile of bricks. One of the officers shouted something, but I couldn't hear it over the screaming of the alarm. Tiffany put her hands up. She was shaking so hard her hands were a blur. The officer motioned for her to come out. He motioned for her to get on the ground. She didn't move. She was paralyzed by the noise and the fear. The officer stepped inside. He grabbed her arm. He pulled her up. She stumbled. She looked back at the wall, at the empty space where the mugshot used to be. She started screaming. I could see her mouth moving. I could see the cords in her neck straining. She was screaming that it was a mistake. She was screaming that it was a prank. She was screaming my name. "Caleb," she was yelling. "Caleb, you set me up. Yes, I did. I thought. I set you up with the truth, and you choked on it." The officer spun her around. He pushed her against the corrugated metal wall. He pulled her hands behind her back. Click, click. The sound of handcuffs is distinct. Even over the alarm, even over the sirens, I imagined I could hear that metallic finality. It was the sound of a door closing. Not a storage unit door, but the door to her life. They marched her out. I switched the camera view to the exterior feed. I saw them walking her toward the patrol car. Her expensive hair extensions were messy. Her designer jacket was covered in dust from the storage unit floor. She looked small. She looked cheap. Darius was standing by the hood of the cruiser. He watched them bring her out. She locked eyes with him. She stopped walking. She tried to lunge toward him, but the officer held her back. "Darius," she screamed, "tell them. Tell them we are married. Tell them it is family property. You cannot let them take me." Darius looked at her. He looked at the handcuffs. He said something to the officer. The officer nodded. Darius walked over to her. He stood 2 feet away. "Safe. Separate." I saw his lips move. He said 3 words. I heard them clearly through the microphone on the officer's lapel, which picked up nearby audio. "Who is Jessica?" he asked. Tiffany flinched as if he had slapped her. "Darius, please," she sobbed. "Who is Jessica?" he repeated louder. She didn't answer. She couldn't answer, because admitting who Jessica was meant admitting that Tiffany never existed. The officer pushed her head down and guided her into the back seat of the cruiser. The cage. The plastic seat. The smell of old arrests. She slumped against the window. She looked out at my son. She looked out at the storage unit, and then she looked up. She looked right at the security camera mounted on the pole near the gate. The camera I was watching through. She knew I was there. She couldn't see me, but she could feel me. She bared her teeth in a snarl of pure hatred. I raised my glass of bourbon. "Here is to you, Jessica," I said. "You wanted the keys to the kingdom. You wanted to unlock the secret. Well, you found it. The secret is that you cannot steal what you did not earn." The patrol car pulled away. The lights flashed one last time, reflecting in the puddles on the asphalt. Darius stood alone in the parking lot. He looked at the empty space where his wife used to be. He looked lost. My phone rang. It was Sergeant Miller. "We got her Cal," he said. "We ran her prints on the mobile scanner. It lit up like a Christmas tree. Warrants in Florida. Warrants in Georgia. Identity theft. Grand larceny. And now federal breaking and entering." I let out a long, slow breath. "And my son?" I asked. "He is shaken up," Miller said. "He gave a statement. He told us everything. He told us she forced the lock. He told us about the bolt cutters. He is cooperating, Cal. He is not a suspect. He is a witness." "Good," I said. "That is good." "Do you want to talk to him?" Miller asked. "He is standing right here." I looked at the screen. I saw Miller hand the phone to Darius. Darius took the phone. He held it to his ear with both hands like a lifeline. "Dad," he whispered. His voice was broken. "I am here, son," I said. "Dad." "You were right," he sobbed. "You were right about everything. She is not who she said she was. The wall, Dad. The pictures. Is it true? Is it all true?" "It is true, son," I said. "Why didn't you tell me?" Darius cried. "Why did you let me marry her? Why did you let it go this far?" "Because you were in love with a mask, Darius," I said gently. "If I had told you, you would have hated me. You would have defended her. You had to see the face underneath the mask. You had to see her holding the cutters. You had to see her tearing down the truth." Darius slid down against the fender of the police car until he was sitting on the ground. He put his head in his free hand. "I feel so stupid," he wept. "I feel so used." "You were used, son," I said, "but you are not stupid. You are human, and humans get fooled by shiny things. That is why we have to learn the difference between gold and gold paint." "What do I do now, Dad?" he asked. "She is gone. The house is empty. I am alone." "You are not alone," I said. "I am coming home." "Really?" Darius asked, looking up. "You are coming back." "I am checking out of the hotel right now," I said. "I will be there in 20 minutes. Hotel, Darius asked, confused. "I thought you were in Halifax." "I never left, son," I said. "A father never leaves his post when his family is under attack." I hung up. I closed the laptop. I packed it into my bag. I walked to the window and opened the curtains. The sun was high in the sky. It was a brutal, unforgiving light, but it was clean. I checked out of the hotel. I got into my rusted truck. I drove toward the storage unit, not to visit the past, but to pick up my son and drive him into the future. The trap had snapped. The rat was caught. Now it was time to clean up the mess and rebuild the house. The siren inside the storage unit was a physical force. It was a sonic weapon designed to disorient and incapacitate, and it was doing its job perfectly. Tiffany was pressed against the back wall of the unit, her hands clamped over her ears, her eyes squeezed shut. She was trying to block out the noise, but she could not block out the reality. The reality was the red and blue strobe lights bouncing off the corrugated metal ceiling. The reality was the heavy footsteps of authority crunching on the gravel outside. The reality was that her gamble had failed, and the house always wins when the dealer is the one who shuffled the deck. I watched from my laptop screen as Sergeant Miller stepped into the frame. He did not run. He did not draw his weapon. He walked with the heavy, deliberate pace of a man who has seen everything and is impressed by nothing. He was wearing his full uniform, the badge on his chest gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights of the corridor. He looked like Judgment Day in polyester. He stopped at the doorway. He looked down at the broken padlock lying on the concrete. He looked at the red bolt cutters that Tiffany had dropped. He nodded to himself. It was a nod of confirmation. The evidence was plain. The intent was clear. He stepped into the unit. "Ma'am," he shouted over the wail of the siren. "Ma'am, I need you to stand up and put your hands where I can see them." Tiffany opened her eyes. She looked at Miller. For a split second, I saw her try to compose herself. I saw her try to pull the mask back on. She wiped her nose. She tried to smooth her hair. She was going to try the innocent suburban wife routine. "Officer," she yelled, her voice shrill and breaking. "Thank God you are here. There has been a mistake. A terrible mistake. My husband, he lost the key. We were just trying to get our things." Miller did not smile. He did not frown. He just reached into his pocket and pulled out a remote control. He pressed a button. The siren cut out instantly. The silence that followed was sudden and heavy. It rushed into the room like water filling a vacuum. It was more terrifying than the noise because in the silence there was no place to hide. Miller looked at her. "Your husband lost the key," he repeated flatly. "Yes," Tiffany said, standing up and dusting off her knees. She pointed at Darius, who was standing outside the door looking like a ghost. "He is right there. Darius, tell him. Tell him this is your father's unit. Tell him we have permission." Darius did not speak. He looked at the floor. He looked at the wall of mugshots. He could not look at her. Miller ignored her plea. He walked over to the folding table in the center of the room. He looked at the thermos. He looked at the newspaper. And then he looked at the file folder I had left there. It was a manila folder. Thick, heavy. I had labeled it in bold black marker. It was the only thing on the table besides the coffee. Miller picked it up. He read the label out loud. "Evidence of probation violation. Subject Jessica Smith." Tiffany froze. The color drained from her face, leaving it a sickly gray. "What is that?" she whispered. Miller opened the file. He whistled low and long. "This looks like a comprehensive file, ma'am," Miller said, flipping through the pages. "We have a copy of a Florida driver's license for a Jessica Smith. We have a warrant from Georgia for identity theft. And we have a very interesting timeline of wire transfers." He looked up at her. "But the most interesting thing is this note here." He pulled out a single sheet of yellow legal paper. It was a note I had written myself just that morning. It read, "If this unit is breached, please scan the intruder's prints immediately. Subject is a flight risk." Miller looked at Tiffany. "You are Tiffany Robinson, right?" he asked. "Yes," she stammered. "Yes, that is my name. Show him your ID, Darius." "I do not need his ID," Miller said. "I need yours." He unclipped a small device from his belt. It was a mobile fingerprint scanner. "Step forward, ma'am." Tiffany backed away. She hit the back wall. She bumped into the corkboard, causing the photos of her past to flutter. "No," she said. "You cannot do this. This is harassment. I want a lawyer." "You can have a lawyer when you are booked," Miller said, stepping closer. "Right now you are a suspect in a felony break-in. Give me your hand." He didn't wait for her to offer it. He reached out and grabbed her wrist. His grip was iron. He forced her thumb onto the glass screen of the scanner. The device beeped. A green light flashed. Miller looked at the small screen. He raised his eyebrows. "Well, hello, Jessica," he said. Tiffany snatched her hand back. She looked wildly around the room looking for an exit, but there was only the rolling door and it was blocked by a wall of blue uniforms. "It is a mistake," she shrieked. "The machine is broken." Miller clipped the scanner back onto his belt. "The machine is fine, Jessica. And so is the National Crime Information Center database. It says here you have outstanding warrants in 3 states: grand larceny, fraud, and violation of probation. You skipped town 2 years ago, didn't you?" You thought if you changed your name and married a nice boy in a quiet town, nobody would find you. He shook his head. You picked the wrong town, Jessica, and you definitely picked the wrong father-in-law. He reached for his handcuffs. Turn around. Tiffany didn't turn around. She lunged. She wasn't lunging at Miller. She was lunging at the table. She grabbed the file folder. She tried to rip it. She tried to destroy the paper trail that connected Tiffany the bride to Jessica the con artist. Miller was faster. He grabbed her arm and spun her around. He pushed her against the corrugated wall. Stop fighting, he barked. You are making it worse. He pulled her arms behind her back. The handcuffs clicked shut. The sound was crisp and final. He hauled her upright. She was sobbing now. Ugly, desperate tears. Darius, she screamed. Darius, do not let them take me. I am your wife. Darius walked into the unit then. He moved slowly like a man walking underwater. He stopped a few feet away from her. He looked at the file folder that Miller was holding. He looked at the name written on it. Jessica Smith, he whispered. He looked at her. You aren't even Tiffany, he said. His voice was hollow. The woman I married, she doesn't exist. I am Tiffany, she cried. I am the woman who loves you. Names do not matter, Darius. Love matters. Names matter when they are on a warrant, Darius said. He looked at Miller. Is it true? Is she wanted? Miller nodded. Since 2019, son. She has been running a long time. This marriage, this house, it was just a hideout. Darius looked at her one last time. He looked at the woman who had isolated him from his father, who had spent his money, who had turned his life into a weapon against his own family. And he saw the truth. He turned his back on her. Darius, she screamed. Where are you going? I am going to call my dad, he said without looking back. Miller took her arm. Let's go, Jessica. As they dragged her out of the unit, she lost all composure. The mask fell away completely. The sweet voice was gone. The victim act was gone. She looked up at the corner of the room where the security camera was mounted. She knew I was watching. She knew I was the architect of this moment. You old bastard, she screamed, spittle flying from her mouth. You planned this. You trapped me. I watched on my screen as she fought against the officers. You tricked me, she yelled. You put those bricks there. You put that fake key there. You wanted me to break in. You enticement. This is entrapment. Miller laughed. It is not entrapment if you bring your own bolt cutters, darling, he said, pushing her toward the door. You lured me, she shrieked, her voice echoing down the corridor. You jealous old man. You couldn't stand that I was young. You couldn't stand that I was going to take it all. I hope you rot, Caleb. I hope you die alone in this miserable box. She was still screaming as they put her in the back of the cruiser. She was screaming about emeralds. She was screaming about injustice. She was screaming the frantic, nonsensical things that guilty people scream when they realize the walls have finally closed in. I sat in my hotel room and closed the laptop. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel happy. I felt a deep exhaustion. It is a terrible thing to have to destroy someone to save your family. It is a terrible thing to have to be right about the darkness in human nature. I picked up my phone. Darius was calling. I answered it. Dad, he said. And then he started to cry. I am coming, son, I said. I am coming to get you. I stood up. I walked to the mirror in the hotel room. I looked at my reflection. I looked older than I did yesterday. The lines around my eyes were deeper, but my eyes were clear. I had done what a father has to do. I had protected the castle. I grabbed my keys, the real keys. It was time to go home. The silence in the hotel room felt different now. For the last 3 hours it had been filled with the electronic hum of surveillance equipment and the frantic sounds of my family tearing itself apart. But now the laptop was closed. The sirens on the screen had faded. The show was over. I was just an old man sitting in a leather chair holding a phone that felt heavier than a brick. I looked at the screen. I could see my own reflection in the dark glass. I looked tired. The lines on my face seemed deeper than they had this morning. Betrayal ages you faster than time ever could. But beneath the fatigue, I saw something else. I saw clarity. I saw the face of a man who had done the hard thing because it was the right thing. I swiped the screen to unlock it. I navigated to the video call app. My thumb hovered over Darius's name. I hesitated. Not because I was afraid to talk to him, but because I knew that the boy who answered this call would not be the same boy who drove to the storage unit this morning. That boy was gone. Innocence had been burned away by the acid of truth. The man who would answer would be scarred, he would be angry, he would be hurt. And as a father, that is the hardest thing to witness. To know that you are the one who pulled the trigger even if it was to save his life. I pressed the button. The ringtone echoed in the quiet room. 1 ring, 2 rings. Then the screen flickered to life. The connection was grainy at first, adjusting to the signal inside the metal corridor of the storage facility. Then the image sharpened. Darius was sitting on the concrete floor. His back was against the orange door of Unit 404. His knees were pulled up to his chest. He looked small. He looked like he had been shipwrecked. Behind him, the unit was a gaping mouth of darkness, the scene of the crime still littered with the debris of Tiffany's rage. He held the phone with shaking hands. His eyes were red and swollen. His expensive dress shirt, the one Tiffany had picked out for him, was stained with dust and sweat. He looked at me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We just looked at each other across the digital divide, across the distance of secrets and lies. "Dad," he whispered. His voice was cracked and dry. "I am here, son," I said softly. Darius looked away from the camera. He looked at the empty parking lot where the police cruiser had just disappeared, taking his wife to a holding cell. "You are at a hotel," he said. He noticed the headboard behind me. The lamp. "You never went to Halifax." "I never went anywhere, Darius," I said. "I was 12 miles away. I was watching." Darius nodded slowly. He didn't seem surprised. The shock had worn off, leaving only a dull ache. "You knew," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. "You knew everything. You knew about Jessica. You knew about the warrants. You knew she was playing me." I took a deep breath. "I knew, son," I said. "I suspected it from the first time she walked into our house. Private investigators have an instinct, Darius. We smell rot before we see it." She smiled too much. She asked too many questions about the property deeds. So I made some calls. I dug into her past. Darius looked back at the screen. His eyes flashed with a sudden spark of anger. It was the defensive anger of a man who realizes he has been a fool. "Then why didn't you tell me?" he demanded. His voice rose, echoing in the empty hallway. "Why, Dad? Why did you let me marry her? Why did you let me bring her into our home? Why did you let me sleep next to a criminal for 2 years? He wiped his nose with the back of his hand. "You could have stopped it," he cried. "You could have sat me down. You could have showed me the files. You could have saved me from this humiliation." I looked at him steady and calm. I knew this question was coming. It is the question every victim asks. Why didn't someone warn me? "Darius, listen to me," I said. "No, you listen," Darius shouted. "You watched me struggle, Dad. You watched me borrow money. You watched me fight with you because of her. You let me treat you like garbage. You let me kick you out of your own bedroom. And you just sat there. You played your little games with the keys and the receipts. Why? Do you hate me that much? Did you want to see me suffer?" I leaned forward. My face filled the screen. "I love you more than life itself, Darius," I said, my voice dropping to a low rumble. "And that is exactly why I couldn't tell you." I paused, letting the words sink in. "Think back, son. Think back to the day you brought her home. Think back to the wedding. You were infatuated. You were drunk on her. She was the most beautiful thing you had ever seen, and she made you feel like a king." "I did love her," Darius whispered. "Exactly," I said. "You loved the mask. If I had come to you 2 years ago with a file folder and a mugshot, what would you have done? Be honest, Darius. Would you have thanked me? Or would you have called me a jealous old man? Would you have believed the police report? Or would you have believed her tears when she told you it was a mistake, a setup, a conspiracy?" Darius opened his mouth to argue, but then he closed it. He looked down at his shoes. He remembered. He remembered how defensive he was. He remembered how he cut off his friends when they criticized her. He remembered how he told me I was old-fashioned and didn't understand modern love. "You would have hated me," I continued. "She would have spun it. She would have told you I was trying to control you. She would have made me the villain, and you would have chosen her. You would have cut me out of your life completely, and then you would have been truly alone with her." I leaned back in the chair. "I couldn't risk losing you, Darius. So I had to wait. I had to let the disease run its course so I could cure it. Darius wiped his eyes again. But the trap, Dad, he said. The storage unit. The fake emeralds. It was so cruel. You baited her. I baited the trap, I admitted. Because I needed you to see the teeth. I needed you to see who she really was when she thought no one was watching. I pointed at the screen. You saw her today, Darius. You saw her with those bolt cutters. You saw the greed in her eyes. You saw how she treated you when the lock wouldn't open. That wasn't my doing. That was her. I just gave her the stage. She wrote the script. Darius shuddered. He wrapped his arms around himself. She looked like a monster, he whispered. When she was screaming at the wall, when she tried to destroy the photos, she didn't look human. She looked like a wild animal. That is the devil beneath the makeup, son, I said. We all have demons, but some people are nothing but demons wearing a suit. I had to let you see the demon. I had to let you see her try to break the law. I had to let you see her betray you. But did it have to be this hard? Darius asked, his voice breaking. Did I have to lose everything? You didn't lose everything, I said firmly. You lost a lie. You lost a parasite that was draining your bank account and your soul. But you still have your life. You still have your freedom. And you still have your father. Darius looked up. He looked at me with a mixture of shame and gratitude. I treated you so badly, Dad, he said. I let her move you to the basement. I let her feed you garbage. I demanded your money. I feel sick. I feel like I don't deserve your help. I shook my head. You were under a spell, Darius. Manipulation is a powerful drug. I don't blame you for what you did while you were sleepwalking. I only care what you do now that you are awake. Darius looked around the empty storage unit. So what now? He asked. The house. She said she has debts. The mob, Dad. Is that real? The debts are real, I said. But they are her debts, not yours. I have the best lawyers in the city working on the annulment right now. You signed those loan papers under duress and based on fraudulent identity. We will fight it. We will clear your name. And the house, he asked. It feels dirty, Dad. I don't know if I can go back there. We will figure it out, I said. One step at a time. But first, you need to get out of that storage unit. You need to stand up. Darius nodded. He slowly pushed himself up from the floor. He dusted off his pants. He looked at the broken lock on the ground. He looked at the red bolt cutters that the police had left behind as trash. Dad, he said. Yeah. The emeralds. The receipt. The $500,000. Was any of it real? I smiled. A small, sad smile. The receipt was a forgery, Darius. I made it myself in the basement last week with some tea bags and a laser printer. Darius let out a short laugh, a laugh of disbelief. And the gold key? He asked. It opens an old padlock from a shed I tore down in '85, I said. So there was never a fortune, Darius said, looking at the empty room. It was all smoke and mirrors. I paused. I looked at my son standing there in the dusty light. He looked broken, but he was standing. He was free. Not all of it, I said. Darius looked at the screen confused. What do you mean? There is a treasure in that unit, son, I said. But it isn't emeralds, and it isn't gold. Where Darius asked, looking around. The room is empty, Dad. Go inside, I said. Go to the center of the room. Move the rug. Darius hesitated. Dad, he said warily. I am done with games. This isn't a game, I said seriously. This is the payoff. Move the rug, Darius. Darius walked into the unit. He grabbed the corner of the dirty Persian rug I had laid down on the concrete floor. He pulled it back. Underneath the rug, set flush into the concrete, was a small square steel safe. Darius stared at it. A floor safe, he whispered. I punched the code into my phone, sending the signal to unlock it remotely. Beep, click. The door of the safe popped open a fraction of an inch. Open it, Darius, I said. He knelt down. He lifted the heavy steel door. Inside, there were no glittering jewels. There were no stacks of cash. There was a single thick blue folder. Darius reached in and pulled it out. He opened it. He stared at the documents inside. They were technical drawings, diagrams, patent filings. What is this? He asked, flipping through the pages. That, I said, is the Robinson algorithm. It is a predictive security software I wrote 20 years ago. It is used by 3 major banks and a dozen armored car companies. Darius looked up, his mouth open. You wrote software, he asked. You are a PI. I was a PI, I corrected him. But I was also a man who liked to tinker. I invented a better mousetrap, son. And every time a bank uses it to stop a transaction, I get a royalty check. Darius looked at the papers. How much, he asked. Enough, I said. Enough that I don't have to eat instant coffee unless I am trying to make a point. Enough that we never have to worry about the mortgage again. But why hide it, Darius asked. Why live in the bungalow? Why drive the rusted truck? Because money changes people, Darius, I said. I saw what money did to my clients. I saw what it did to families. I wanted you to grow up valuing the work, not the check. I wanted you to build your own life, not wait for mine to end. I looked at him. And when Tiffany came along, I hid it to protect it. And to protect you. Because if she had known about this, she wouldn't have just used bolt cutters. She would have used something much sharper. Darius closed the folder. He held it to his chest. You saved me, he whispered. I am your father, Darius, I said. That is the job description. I watched him stand up. He looked stronger now. He held the folder not like a lottery ticket, but like a responsibility. I am checking out of the hotel now, I said. I will be there in 20 minutes. Wait for me. I will wait, Dad, Darius said. And Darius? Yeah. Leave the bolt cutters. We don't need them anymore. He smiled. A real smile this time. Weak, but real. See you soon, Dad. I ended the call. I put the phone in my pocket. I grabbed my suitcase. I walked out of the hotel room, leaving the darkness behind. I walked toward the elevator, ready to go pick up my son and start the long, hard work of rebuilding a life that was finally built on truth. The drive from the hotel to the storage facility took 20 minutes, but it felt like traveling through a time warp. I was driving the same rusted Ford pickup truck I had owned for 15 years. The engine still rattled, and the suspension still groaned over every pothole. To the outside world, I was just an old man in a work truck, probably on his way to fix a leaky faucet or haul some brush. But inside the cab, the air felt different. The heavy fog of deception that had hung over my life for the last 2 years was finally lifting. I wasn't driving to a crime scene anymore. I was driving to a demolition site where the rubble needed to be cleared so the foundation could be seen again. I pulled into the lot of secure storage. The police cruisers were gone. The sirens had faded into the distance, taking the noise and the drama with them. All that was left was the silent rows of orange doors and a solitary figure sitting on the curb near the gate. Darius looked up as I approached. He was still wearing the dress shirt Tiffany had picked out for him, but it was untucked now and stained with the gray dust of the storage unit. He looked like a man who had survived a shipwreck. He stood up slowly as I put the truck in park. He didn't run to me. He walked with a heavy hesitation, the walk of a man carrying a burden of shame. I got out of the truck. I didn't say anything. I just walked up to him and pulled him into a hug. It wasn't a soft hug. It was a hard embrace, the kind that says, I got you, and I am not letting go. He stiffened at first, then he collapsed into me. He sobbed into my shoulder, gripping my old flannel jacket like it was a life raft. We stood there in this parking lot, 2 Robinson men, broken but standing while the cars drove by on the highway, oblivious to the war we had just fought. I am sorry, Dad, he choked out. I am so sorry. It is done, son, I said, patting his back. It is done. Let's go inside. We walked back to Unit 404. The police had strung a piece of yellow caution tape across the open door, but they hadn't locked it because the lock was destroyed. I reached up and tore the tape down. It fluttered to the ground, landing next to the broken padlock and the abandoned bolt cutters. My property, I said, stepping over the tape. My rules. The unit was a mess. The folding table was overturned. The coffee thermos lay in a puddle of brown liquid. The corkboard on the back wall was torn and hanging by a single screw, the photos of Tiffany's secret life fluttering in the breeze from the door. It looked like a tornado had touched down inside the 10x10 metal box. Darius looked around. He kicked a piece of the red brick that Tiffany had thrown in her rage. It feels empty, he said. All that drama, all that screaming, and for what? For a room full of junk and fake clues. I walked to the center of the room. I picked up the folding chair and set it upright. I sat down. It is not junk, Darius, I said. And it wasn't all fake. Darius looked at me. He wiped his face with his sleeve. You said the emeralds were a lie, Dad. You said the money was gone. I said the emeralds were a lie. I corrected him. I said I didn't stash cash in a bag, but I never said there wasn't a treasure here. Darius sighed. He looked exhausted. Dad, please. No more riddles. I cannot take any more surprises. If there is something here, just show me. If it is just old newspapers, let's just go home. I pointed to the floor. Move the rug, I said. Darius looked down. In the center of the concrete floor lay a dirty Persian rug. I had bought it at a flea market 10 years ago. It was stained and threadbare. To anyone looking, it was just a piece of trash used to keep the dust down. Why, he asked. Just move it, son. Darius bent down. He grabbed the corner of the heavy rug. He pulled it back. Underneath the rug, the concrete was not smooth. There was a square cut into the floor, a steel plate set flush with the ground. It was seamless, almost invisible if you didn't know where to look. In the center of the plate was a digital keypad. Darius froze. He stared at the steel square. A floor safe, he whispered. He looked up at me, his eyes wide. You dug up the concrete. I poured the concrete, I said. When I rented this unit 15 years ago, I asked the owner if I could make some modifications. He owed me a favor. I solved a theft case for him back in '98. He let me install this. I leaned forward and punched a code into the keypad on the floor. It wasn't my birthday this time. It was the date Beatrice and I bought our first house. Beep, 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 click. The heavy steel door popped open with a pneumatic hiss. Darius stepped back. He looked terrified. He was expecting gold bars. He was expecting the millions that Tiffany had screamed about. He was expecting the thing that had ruined his marriage. Go ahead, I said. Open it. He reached down. His hand trembled as he lifted the heavy steel lid. He looked inside. The safe was deep, but it wasn't full of cash. It wasn't full of jewelry. Sitting at the bottom on a velvet cushion was a single thick blue folder. Darius reached in and pulled it out. He held it like it was a bomb. What is this? He asked. Open it, I said. He untied the string on the folder. He opened the flap. He pulled out a stack of documents. They were covered in technical diagrams, lines of code, and official government stamps. He squinted at the top page. United States Patent Office, he read aloud. Method and apparatus for predictive behavioral analysis in security systems. Inventor Caleb Robinson. Dated 2004. He flipped the page. He looked at the diagrams. It was a complex web of algorithms and flowcharts. I don't understand, he said, looking at me. What is this, Dad? It is the Robinson algorithm, I said, leaning back in my chair. You know I was a private investigator, I continued. I spent 30 years watching people, watching how they move, watching how they lie, watching the tiny unconscious ticks that give them away before they commit a crime. I paused, remembering those long nights in stakeout cars. I realized that human behavior is a pattern, I said. It is math. If you look closely enough, you can predict when a thief is going to steal or when a guard is going to fall asleep. So 20 years ago, I started writing it down. I taught myself to code. I turned my instincts into mathematics. Darius looked at the papers with new respect. You wrote software, he said. I wrote a ghost, I said. A ghost that lives inside security cameras. It alerts guards before a crime happens. It detects micro-expressions. It detects intent. Darius flipped to the back of the folder. There was a spreadsheet, rows and rows of numbers. He ran his finger down the column. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Brinks. He looked at the totals at the bottom. $20,000, he whispered. A month, I added. Darius dropped the folder. It landed on the rug with a soft thud. $20,000 a month, he repeated. For 20 years. I nodded. That is almost $5 million, Dad. I shrugged. Give or take. With interest and investments, it is a bit more. Darius stared at me. He looked at my worn-out boots. He looked at my frayed jacket. He looked at the rusted truck parked outside. You are a millionaire, he said. His voice was quiet, shocked. You have been a millionaire since I was in high school. And you live in a bungalow. You drive a truck that barely starts. You let Tiffany buy generic coffee because she said we were broke. He stood up. He started pacing the small room just like Tiffany had done, but his anger was different. It wasn't greed, it was confusion. Why, Dad? Why did you hide it? We struggled, Dad. I took out student loans, I drove a beater car. Mom. When Mom got sick, we worried about the bills. I stood up. I walked over to him. I put my hands on his shoulders and made him look at me. Your mother never worried about a bill, I said firmly. I paid every cent of her treatment. The best doctors, the best care. I just didn't flash the checkbook. I let you think insurance covered it because I didn't want you to worry about the cost. I wanted you to focus on her. But why hide it from me? Darius asked, tears welling up in his eyes again. I am your son. Why didn't you trust me? I did trust you, I said. I trusted you to build your own life. I walked over to the pile of bricks in the corner. Darius, look at this world, I said. Look at what money does to people. Look at Tiffany. She smelled money on me the first day she met me. She didn't know about the patent, but she knew I had something. And look what it turned her into. It turned her into a monster. I turned back to him. If I had given you everything when you were 18, if I had bought you a Porsche and a condo, who would you be today? Would you be the man who worked double shifts to pay for his degree? Would you be the man who knows the value of $1? Or would you be just another rich kid waiting for his daddy to die? Darius was silent. He looked at his hands. I hid the source of the money, Darius, I said, picking up the folder. I didn't hide it to hurt you. I hid it to protect you. I wanted to see who came into our lives for us and who came for the wallet. I tapped the folder against my chest. This patent, it is just an asset. It is a piece of paper. But my character, your character, that is the legacy. And you cannot buy character, Darius. You have to forge it. You have to sweat for it. Darius looked at the folder, then back at the empty safe. So Tiffany, she was right, he said. There was a fortune. She was right about the money, I said. But she was wrong about the value. She thought the value was in the spending. She wanted to burn it. She wanted to wear it. I put the folder back in the safe. The value is in the freedom, son. This money, it means I don't have to answer to anyone. It means I can help you when you really need it, not just when you want a new toy. It means I can sleep at night knowing my family is safe. Darius looked at the safe. He looked at the floor. She would have spent it all, he whispered. If she had found this, if she had access, she would have drained it dry in a year. In a month, I said. And then she would have left you, because people like Tiffany don't love the man. They love the lifestyle. And when the money runs out, the love runs out. I closed the heavy steel door of the safe. It clanged shut with a sound of finality. I stood up and dusted off my knees. I wanted you to find a wife who loved Darius Robinson, the man with the kind heart and the hard work ethic. Not Darius Robinson, the heir to the security fortune. I paused. I failed you on that, son. I let a wolf into the henhouse because I thought you needed to learn to spot the teeth. I am sorry it hurt so much. Darius shook his head. No, Dad. You didn't fail me. You saved me. If I had known about this money, I might have been just like her. I might have thought I was better than everyone else. He looked at the broken lock on the floor. She cut the lock, he said. She broke in, and she found nothing but bricks. I smiled. She found exactly what she was looking for, I said. She found the end of the road. I put my arm around his shoulder. Come on, son. Let's get out of here. This place smells like betrayal and old coffee. We have a lot of paperwork to do. Paperwork? Darius asked. Yeah, I said, steering him toward the door. We have to file for an annulment. We have to change the locks on the house. And I think it is time we updated my will. Darius stopped. He looked at me. I don't want the money, Dad, he said. Not like this. You are getting the money eventually, son, I said. But not yet. First you are going to learn how the software works. You are going to learn the business. You are going to earn it. I pointed to the truck. But right now, I am going to buy you a steak dinner. And I am paying. With the patent money, Darius asked, cracking a small smile. No, I said, climbing into the truck. With my pension check. The patent money is for the future. And the future starts tomorrow. We drove out of the storage facility, leaving the yellow tape and the bad memories behind. The sun was setting, turning the sky a brilliant gold. It was real gold. Not the fool's gold Tiffany had chased, but the gold of a new beginning. I looked at my son. He was quiet, but he was peaceful. The fever had broken, and I knew that the real asset wasn't buried in the floor of Unit 404. It was sitting right next to me in the passenger seat, and finally, he was safe. The lawyer's office smelled of lemon polish and shark skin. It was not the kind of office Tiffany would have hired. There were no glass walls or espresso machines. There were piles of case files on the floor, and a lawyer named Hennessy who looked like he had been practicing law since the Constitution was signed. Hennessy was expensive, but he was worth every penny because he did not believe in mercy. He believed in the complete annihilation of the opposition. I sat in the corner chair watching my son. Darius sat at the mahogany desk, his back straight, his hands folded on the legal pad. 3 days ago, he was weeping on the floor of a storage unit. Today, he looked like a man who had walked through fire and burned away everything that was soft. He was wearing a simple button-down shirt and jeans. No more designer brands. No more trying to impress a woman who did not exist. So let me get this straight, Darius said, his voice steady. Because she used a false name on the marriage license, the marriage never legally happened. Hennessy nodded, adjusting his glasses. Precisely. In the eyes of the state of Pennsylvania, you did not marry Tiffany St. James because Tiffany St. James is a fabrication. You married a ghost, and you cannot be legally bound to a ghost. This is not a divorce, Darius. This is an annulment based on fraud. Void ab initio, meaning it is void from the beginning. Darius looked at the papers. And the assets, he asked. Hennessy laughed, a dry bark of a sound. She has no claim to assets because she was never your wife. She gets nothing. No alimony, no division of property, no claim on your future earnings. She leaves this marriage exactly as she entered it, with nothing but a criminal record. Darius picked up the pen. His hand did not shake. He signed his name with a flourish. Good, he said. Send it to the jail. I watched him and I felt a swelling of pride in my chest. It is a terrible thing to see your child's heart harden, but sometimes a hard heart is necessary for survival. He was learning. He was learning that in the real world, love is not enough to protect you from a predator. You need paperwork, you need boundaries, and you need the courage to cut the cord. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. We went to the county courthouse. It was a rainy Tuesday, the kind of day that makes the gray stone of the building look like a tombstone. We sat in the back row. Darius wanted to be there. He said he needed to see the end of the story so he could start a new book. When the bailiff brought her in, I almost didn't recognize her. The blonde hair extensions were gone, leaving her natural mousy brown hair that hung limp around her face. The expensive makeup was gone, revealing the pale skin and the dark circles of a woman who had not slept in 14 days. She was wearing an orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. She scanned the room. She was looking for a friendly face. She was looking for a savior. Her eyes landed on Darius. For a second I saw a flash of the old Tiffany. She straightened her spine. She pouted her lips. She tried to summon the manipulation that had worked so well for so years. She mouthed the words, "I love you." Darius did not look away. He did not flinch. He just looked at her with the blank expression of a stranger. It is called the gray rock method. You become as uninteresting and unresponsive as a rock until the narcissist loses interest. The judge was a stern woman with no patience for tears. She read the charges: burglary, destruction of property, probation violation, identity theft. The prosecutor laid out the case. He talked about the bolt cutters. He talked about the alias. He talked about the fake cancer diagnosis. When it was Tiffany's turn to speak, she tried to cry. She told the judge she was a victim of circumstance. She said she was coerced. She pointed a finger at me sitting in the back row. That man, she sobbed, pointing at me. He set me up. He lured me there. He is the criminal. The judge looked at me. Then she looked at the file on her desk, the file that contained my full report, the video evidence, and the signed statement from Darius. "Mr. Robinson is not on trial here, Miss Smith," the judge said sharply, using her real name. "You are, and the evidence shows that you bought the tools, you drove the car, and you cut the lock. You are a danger to society and a danger to the people who try to love you." The gavel banged. 5 years in state prison. No possibility of parole for the first 3. Tiffany screamed. It was a sharp, piercing sound that echoed off the high ceiling. "Darius," she wailed as the bailiffs dragged her away. You promised. You promised for better or worse." Darius stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He turned to me. "Let's go, Dad," he said. "I have work to do." We walked out of the courtroom and we didn't look back. The rain had stopped. The sun was trying to peek through the clouds. That afternoon, the real work began. We went back to the house. It felt different now. The smell of her perfume was fading, replaced by the smell of bleach and open windows. Darius went into the master bedroom, the room she had forced me out of. He didn't move back in. He stripped the bed. He took down the curtains she had bought. He took the clothes she had left behind, the designer dresses and the shoes, and he put them in heavy black trash bags. He didn't donate them. He didn't sell them. He took them to the curb for the garbage truck. She treated people like trash, he said as he tossed a bag of Italian leather handbags onto the pile. So her stuff goes out with the trash. Then he went to the basement. He carried my books back up. He carried my clothes. He carried my old recliner, the one she hated, and put it back in its rightful spot in the living room. You take the master bedroom, Dad, he said. It is your house. I shook my head. No, son, I said. That room has too many ghosts right now. I like the guest room. It faces the street. I like to keep an eye on things. You take the master. Make it your own. So he did. He painted the walls a deep navy blue. He bought simple, sturdy furniture. He turned it into a man's room, a room for thinking, not for filming TikToks. But the biggest change wasn't the furniture. It was the morning routine. A week after the sentencing, Darius came into the kitchen at 6 a.m. He was wearing work boots and a canvas jacket. He had a thermos of coffee in his hand. Real coffee. Black. I was sitting at the table reading the paper. You are up early, I said. I want to learn, Dad, he said. Learn what? The business, he said. Not the software. I know I am not a coder. I mean the security business, the investigation business. I want to know how you saw through her. I want to know how you knew she was lying before she even opened her mouth. I put down the paper. I looked at him. He was serious. The softness was gone, replaced by a hunger for truth. It is not a glamorous job, Darius, I said. It is long hours. It is sitting in cold cars. It is digging through people's trash. It is seeing the worst of humanity every single day. I have already seen the worst, Darius said. I lived with it. Now I want to learn how to stop it. I smiled. Okay, I said. Grab your keys. We have a job in Trenton. Insurance fraud. Guy claims he hurt his back, but I think he is bowling on Tuesdays. For the next 6 months, Darius became my shadow. He didn't ask for a salary. He didn't ask for a title. He just worked. He learned how to tail a car without being seen. He learned how to search public records. He learned how to read body language. I taught him the Robinson rules. Rule number 1, everybody lies. The question is why. Rule number 2, follow the money. Love can be faked, but bank statements tell the truth. Rule number 3, if it looks too good to be true, it is usually a trap. He was a natural. Maybe it was the trauma, or maybe it was genetic, but he had an eye for detail. One afternoon we were sitting in the truck watching a warehouse. We were looking for a thief who was stealing copper wire. There, Darius said, pointing to a guy walking out of the side door. That is just the janitor, I said. He has a broom. Look at his boots, Darius said. He is wearing high-end hiking boots, expensive ones, brand new, and look at the way he walks. He is heavy on the left side, like he has something taped to his leg inside his pants. I looked closer with the binoculars. He was right. The janitor was walking with a slight drag, and the boots were definitely not standard issue. We followed him. 10 minutes later, we watched him pull 3 rolls of copper wire out of his pant leg and sell them to a scrap dealer. I looked at my son. He was writing down the license plate number, calm and professional. Good catch, son, I said. I learned from the best, he said. But the real transformation happened in the evenings. We started working on the patent business together. I showed him the books. I showed him the contracts with the banks. I didn't just hand it over. I made him read every line. I made him understand the responsibility. Daddy said one night, looking at the ledger, we could expand this. The algorithm. It could be used for more than just banks, schools, hospitals. They need this kind of security. I leaned back in my chair. I am too old for expansion, Darius, I said. I am tired. I want to fish. I want to drive my truck without worrying about meetings. Darius looked at me. Let me do it, he said. Let me run the expansion. I will do the legwork. I will meet the clients. You keep the patent, you keep the control, but let me build it. I looked at him. He wasn't asking for a handout. He was asking for a job, a hard job. I walked over to the safe, the floor safe that had started it all. I opened it. I took out the blue folder. I handed it to him. It is your company now, son, I said. Darius froze. Dad, no, I am not ready. You are ready, I said. You spotted the janitor. You cleaned up the house. You stood up to Tiffany. You are more ready than I ever was. He took the folder. His hands were steady. I won't let you down, he said. I know, I said, because if you do, I know where you live. and I have a very loud alarm system." We both laughed. It was the first time in 2 years that we had laughed together. Real laughter, not the polite chuckle to hide the tension. That night I sat on the porch. Darius was inside on the phone talking to a potential client. He sounded confident. He sounded like a man. I took a sip of my bourbon. The house was peaceful. The demons were gone. Tiffany was in a cell wearing orange, and my son was in the living room building a future. I had lost a daughter-in-law, but I had gained a partner. And the best part was I didn't have to hide anymore. I didn't have to pretend to be poor. I didn't have to carry bricks in a duffel bag. I could just be Caleb. And Caleb was doing just fine. The mist on the lake was thick enough to chew. It hung over the water like a heavy gray blanket, dampening the sound of the world until the only things that existed were the gentle lap of the waves against the hull of the boat and the rhythmic clicking of my fishing reel. It was 6 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. 6 months ago, a Tuesday morning meant stress. It meant Tiffany screaming about a coffee stain on the counter. It meant Darius rushing out the door with terror in his eyes, trying to get to a job he hated to pay for a lifestyle he could not afford. It meant me hiding in my own basement, plotting a war against my own family. But today, Tuesday, meant bass fishing. I sat in the stern of the small aluminum boat, my old green hat pulled low over my eyes. I watched the line where it disappeared into the dark water. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of pine needles and damp earth. It was the cleanest smell in the world. Darius sat in the bow. He was baiting his hook with a worm. His hands were steady. 6 months ago, those hands shook so bad he could barely hold a fork. Now they were the hands of a man who worked for a living. He was wearing a flannel shirt and jeans that had grease stains on the knees. He had grown a beard, a thick dark beard that made him look older, but in a good way. He looked like he had finally grown into his face. He cast his line. It hit the water with a soft plop. So Darius said, breaking the silence, "I went over the quarterly reports last night, the new contract with the school district in Ohio. It is big, Dad. They want the Robinson algorithm installed in 40 schools by September." I nodded, watching my bobber. "Can we handle the volume?" I asked. Darius smiled. He didn't look at me for approval anymore. He looked at me as a partner. "We can handle it," he said. "I hired 2 more techs yesterday. Veterans, guys you would like. They are disciplined. They show up early." "Good," I said. "Discipline is hard to find." We sat there for a while, just drifting. The sun began to burn through the mist, turning the gray water to silver. "You know," Darius said, looking back toward the shore where my rusted Ford truck was parked, "you could buy a new truck, Dad. With the advance from the Ohio deal alone, you could buy a fleet of trucks. You could buy a boat that doesn't leak." I looked at the truck. It was sitting there on the boat ramp, mud on the tires, a dent in the rear bumper from where I backed into a hydrant in '99. It was ugly. It was loud. And it was perfect. "I like my truck," I said. "It has 200,000 miles on it, Dad." Darius laughed. "The heater only works when it wants to. The radio is stuck on the country station. It runs," I said. "It starts every time I turn the key. It hauls what I need it to haul. And nobody looks at it twice." I reeled in my line, checking the bait. "That truck is a filter, son," I said. "A filter?" Darius asked. "If I pull up in a brand new Mercedes, people treat me a certain way," I said. "They smile too much. They open doors. They laugh at jokes that aren't funny. They see the money, not the man." I cast the line back out. "But when I pull up in that Ford, people show me who they really are. If they treat me with respect when I look like a gardener, then I know it is real respect. If they ignore me or talk down to me, then I know they are shallow. That truck has saved me from more bad business deals than any background check." Darius nodded slowly. He understood now. He had learned the hard way what happens when you fall in love with the packaging instead of the product. "Speaking of bad deals," I said, keeping my voice casual, "I got a letter from the state penitentiary yesterday." Darius stiffened. His shoulders went up just a fraction of an inch. "From her?" he asked. He didn't say her name. We didn't say her name anymore. She was just her, the storm that had passed. From her, I confirmed. "What did she want?" Darius asked, staring at the water. "The usual," I said. "She has found God, apparently. She is leading a prayer group in Cell Block C. She says she has changed. She says she forgives us." "Forgives us," Darius scoffed. "That is rich." "She asked for money for the commissary," I said. "She says the soap is terrible and she needs shampoo." "Did you send it?" Darius asked, looking at me. I took a sip of my coffee from the thermos. I sent her a bar of ivory soap, I said. It is 99 cents. It cleans just fine. I told her that character is what makes you clean, not expensive shampoo. Darius laughed. It was a genuine laugh, deep and free. You are cold, old man, he said. I am fair, I said. I gave her what she needed, not what she wanted. That is more than she ever gave us. We caught 3 bass that morning, not huge ones, but enough for dinner. As we packed up the gear, the sun was fully up. The world was bright and awake. We loaded the boat onto the trailer. I watched Darius winch it up. He was strong now. He moved with purpose. He checked the safety chains twice. He checked the lights. He was thorough. I leaned against the hood of the truck. I reached into my pocket. My fingers closed around a small object. It was warm from my body heat. Darius, I said. He turned around, wiping his hands on a rag. Yeah, Dad. Come here a second. He walked over. He stood in front of me, taller than me now. I pulled my hand out of my pocket. I held it out, palm up. Sitting in my hand was a key. It wasn't the brass key with the yellow tape. It wasn't the fake key that had started the war. It was a silver key. High security, laser cut. It looked like a piece of aerospace engineering. Darius looked at it. He frowned. What is this? He asked. It is the key, I said, the real key, to Unit 404, and to the floor safe. Darius took a step back. He put his hands up. Dad. No, he said. I don't want it. You keep the patent. You keep the control. I am just the manager. I don't want that responsibility. I grabbed his hand. I pressed the key into his palm and closed his fingers around it. It is not about the money. Darius, I said. We have accountants for the money. We have lawyers for the patent. Then what is it for? He asked, looking at the silver medal in his hand like it might bite him. It is a reminder, I said. I looked him in the eye. I am 74 years old, son. I am healthy, but I am not immortal. One day I am going to go on a fishing trip and I won't come back. When that happens, I don't want you searching for answers. I don't want you wondering where the legacy is. I pointed to the key. That key opens the history of this family. It opens the proof of what we built. But more importantly, it is a symbol of trust. I put my hand on his shoulder. I didn't give this to you before because you weren't ready to hold it. You would have traded it for a smile from a pretty girl. But today you are holding it because you earned it. Darius looked at the key. He squeezed it tight. Ju lei na, I said, slipping into the language of my grandfather for a second before correcting myself. Keep it. Not for the money, but to remind you, never trust appearances. Never trust a smile that doesn't reach the eyes. And Darius. He looked up, tears shining in his eyes. Yeah, Dad. Don't ever cut your father's lock again, I said with a grin. Those padlocks are expensive. Darius laughed. He pulled me into a hug. I promise, Dad, he said. No more bolt cutters. Bolt. We got into the truck. I turned the key in the ignition. The old engine roared to life, coughing a little before settling into a steady idle. It wasn't a pretty sound. It wasn't a smooth sound. But it was the sound of something that works. Something that lasts. I put the truck in gear. Ready to go home, partner, I asked. Darius looked out the window at the lake, at the peaceful water, at the world that was waiting for us. Yeah, he said. Let's go home. We drove away from the lake, the tires crunching on the gravel. We didn't talk much on the way back. We didn't need to. We understood each other. The gold digger was gone. The lies were gone. The fake emeralds were gone. But as I looked over at my son, watching the trees blur past, I knew I was the richest man in the world. Because I hadn't just saved my fortune. I had saved my son. Curiosity didn't just kill the cat, it exposed the rat. We live in a world where people fall in love with potential inheritances rather than the people who built them. My daughter-in-law thought she was breaking into a vault of gold, but she broke into a mirror that showed her true ugly face. Trust is fragile, but truth is absolute. If you have to use bolt cutters to get into someone's life, you don't belong there. And to all the sons out there, listen to your fathers. We have seen the devil before, even when she wears a white dress. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us share more stories like this one. And I want to ask you a question. Do you think Darius should have forgiven Tiffany, or did he do the right thing by walking away? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your keys close.